Over the years, we've covered a lot of Saturday morning cartoons. This is a compilation of several of those shows assembled as a longer video that helps better define the context of the era and the progression of those series over the years. And incidentally, the progression of our show as well. This isn't all of these Saturday morning cartoons we've covered, and you may have already seen these episodes before, but squished together like this in a multi-pack makes it easier to pour milk over the whole thing and eat it all in one sitting. Keep your PJs on, grab a bowl of cereal, and have fun with the Saturday morning marathon. Thank you to Magic Spoon for sponsoring this video. Click the link in the description below and use code TOYGALAXY for $5 off your order today. Magic Spoon is like getting in a time machine and hitting the accelerator. Just one spoonful and it's like you're a kid again, sitting in front of the TV, eating your favorite cereal, watching your favorite cartoons. TV and cartoons not included. But you're not a kid anymore, and that cereal probably isn't what you should be eating. I'm not the boss of you, but I'll tell you that Magic Spoon is just like that cereal, but improved with all the benefits of modern technology, like making it out of something other than pure sugar. Magic Spoon has 0 grams of sugar, 13 to 14 grams of protein, and only 4 net grams of carbs in each serving. Also, only 140 calories. It's keto-friendly, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, and low-carb. Build your own variety pack from frosted, peanut butter, maple waffle, and a whole bunch of other awesome flavors. They ship to Canada and the UK and even drop limited edition flavors all the time. Magic Spoon is so confident in their product it's backed with a 100% happiness guarantee, so if you don't like it for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Use my code TOYGALAXY for $5 off your delicious and healthy Magic Spoon cereal. Go to magicspoon.com/TOYGALAXY to save $5 today. Thanks again to Magic Spoon. For over 30 years, it was the obligatory weekly community event for kids. It was the showcase for new social trends, the arbiter of pop culture relevance, an exhibition of fantasies for an entire age group unsurpassed in the composition and density of relevant content broadcast from 8 a.m. to noon. Hi, I'm Dan Larson, and this is the history of Saturday morning cartoons. Which came first, the desire to do nothing but sit in front of the TV and watch cartoons, or the creation of the cartoons that inspired you to do nothing but sit in front of the TV and watch cartoons? From the 1960s through the mid-1990s, most kids didn't have much going on and no way to connect with each other except in person or on the phone. Hard to do that from the couch and/or if you just don't want to. After a week of school, your internal clock already had you getting up early. You weren't going to do anything productive without the application of force. A bowl of sugar cereal in your lap, fire up the television, and let the adventures begin. Spider-Man, Batman, Bugs Bunny, Scooby-Doo, Pac-Man, and hundreds of other pop culture icons, thousands of supporting cast members there for you. There to bring every kid together around a shared entertainment experience, a unified delivery system for every brand hoping to increase their visibility and market share that completely disappeared after having been a way of life for nearly 4 decades. Technically, television was invented in the late 1800s, but it wasn't a commercially viable product until the early 1900s, and even then it wasn't in widespread use until the late 1940s after World War II. It's the old problem of how do you sell a device when there is no content for it. TV was a curiosity, surely a thing that would be a big deal in the future, but until TV stations started broadcasting TV shows in the late 1920s and into the 30s, what were you going to do with it? An ad for Bulova watches aired on NBC in 1941, revenue generated by promoting a product during a broadcast. That's the real revolution for the way television would function for the next half a century. Through the 40s and 50s, black and white TVs were the standard. Color TV had been invented, but again, no one was broadcasting in color. It wasn't until the late 1950s into the early 1960s that enough color TVs were on the market and stations began broadcasting in color that cartoons could finally find their way from the cinema into your living room. The Flintstones debuted on ABC in 1960 as a primetime network series. Its initial run would last until 1966. That same year, The Bugs Bunny Show, a collection of animated shorts which had run in theaters ahead of feature films, debuted also in primetime, also on ABC. Fred Flintstone, Bugs Bunny, and other shows like The Jetsons, The Alvin Show, Beanie and Cecil, Tom and Jerry, Mighty Mouse, and Woody Woodpecker, all of these cartoons would see their success repeated when their episodes were rebroadcast on Saturday mornings, helping solidify that time slot as the time to target advertising dollars to the teens and under market specifically. All became longtime staples of Saturday morning. Through the 60s and into the 70s, several animation companies jumped into the original cartoon creation game. While cartoons and Saturday mornings had been popular for years, the idea of creating original content specifically for Saturday morning broadcast to assist in the exploitation of that time for creating revenue for the networks, that was new, that was innovative, that was the future. Animation had become a more affordable and more profitable alternative to live-action television. Actors could perform multiple roles. Reruns allowed for longer runs, spreading out the cost of the initial investment over a longer period of time. And the kids, they loved it. In the 1960s, televisions were found in more and more homes. The cost to own one decreased, and it moved from high-end status symbol to middle-class luxury item. Almost a necessary household appliance. It wasn't just for rich people anymore.
Hello, rich people, Troy's joining you. Yes, I'll hold.
If the 1960s made it clear that children were a specific targetable marketing group, something that could be sold to appropriate advertisers, the 1970s saw the perfection of that business model. And at that point, parents and educators got worried and began to explore whether this was actually a good thing that we, as a society of rational people, should be doing to our children. This was the first generation of kids growing up like this. Let's make sure we aren't doing any long-term damage. Researchers wanted to determine the effect all those hours in front of televisions and exposure to direct marketing was having on all these kids. What they found was that children did indeed have a difficult time understanding the difference between the entertainment portion of the program and the commercials running with it. They found that kids in general didn't really understand how manipulative commercials could be, how clever their creators were at creating demand for a product or an experience. Researchers and parents groups worried about the sustained exposure to animated violence and its normalizing effect, the direct pipeline of commercialism to children's brains. And during the 1970s, their voices were loud enough to get the federal government to implement some rules for the kind of content that cartoon studios could produce and air on network television. In 1978, the Federal Trade Commission, or FTC, considered a measure to outright ban all direct advertising to any children aged 6 and under. Instead, after what was probably an historic period of lobbying by groups representing the advertising industry, cartoon, toy, and cereal producers, the networks were instead encouraged to balance out the content on their networks, maybe make some of the stuff educational and informational. And so began the continuous battle between marketers and television producers on one side trying to protect the freedom of the marketplace, and parents and concerned citizens on the other trying to protect, the kids from being preyed upon by those very smart adult business people. The Schoolhouse Rock series, a Saturday morning Hall of Famer, was a result of that government pressure, as well as other animated shorts like Time for Timer and the live-action One to Grow On series. Some networks took the additional step of creating actual news programs geared specifically for kids that broke down important news of the day, not just news that kids would be interested in.
Saturday mornings, turn on the fun, excitement, and adventures of all your favorite pals when Pac-Man drops in.
Yahoo! Hi-oh, PJ!
But that's not all.
Never fear!
Super Pac is here, followed by Rubik.
Rubik like to play!
With his mystical magic, Rubik the Amazing Cube. Then it's Menudo. And it's the Littles jumping into big adventures.
Better hold on to me, Lucy.
Saturday Sparkle.
The 1980s would be the peak for Saturday morning cartoons. Total indulgence, total mastery of the model. Cartoons as entertainment, yes, but also as advertisement themselves. Partnerships between animation studios and toy companies, video game producers, every potential product tie-in that could be exploited into or out of a cartoon was in play. Almost nothing was created that didn't have the ulterior motive of selling additional products. It was the time that some of the concerns of the researchers and parents groups did come true. I mean, this channel, this stuff, the major brands that are still driving Hollywood right now are all the brands that took root in the 80s. The programs worked. Customers for life. But the 80s are also when the indulgences reached too far, when cracks started to show in the foundation. Daily syndicated cartoons like G.I. Joe and Transformers started to splinter the focused marketing appeal of Saturday mornings. Weekdays didn't have the same degree of rules that Saturday mornings had. The audience was beginning to spread out and break up. Not to mention video game consoles and home video systems demanding a greater share of consumers' attention. TV was losing its monopoly on eyeball time, and Saturday mornings were one of the first victims. In 1990, the federal government took direct formal action to intervene in the way that children's television programming had evolved. Known as the KidVid Rules, the Children's Television Act of 1990 set to increase the quality of educational and informational broadcast television programming for children, end quote. They wanted to find a balance between the type of programs that had been produced and programming that furthers the positive development of children 16 years of age and under in any respect, including the child's intellectual and cognitive or social and emotional needs, end quote. Studies at the time showed that kids 2 to 17 watched over 3 hours of television per day and estimated that by the time they were 18, they would have watched between 15,000 and 20,000 hours of television, which, I gotta say, sounds quaint by today's YouTube, Twitch, and Netflix standards. Television absolutely had a significant impact on children. Studies showed that more than 2/3 of kids and their contemporaries were influenced by what they saw on television. 60% of the kids said that television had a negative impact on values such as disrespect for parents and having sex at too young an age. 82% admitted television should teach right from wrong. Which one of you 40-year-olds sold us out? Start talking. Congress decided that we as a society were responsible for what our kids were watching and that television had the capability to, quote, benefit society and assist in educating and informing children. Television can effectively teach children specific skills, assisting in preparing children for formal schooling, as well as complement skills taught in the classroom, end quote. Congress also noted that, quote, market forces alone had not produced an adequate amount of children's educational and informational programming on commercial television and that government action was needed to increase the availability of such programming, end quote. So in 1991, the FCC put regulations in place that would require networks to increase the amount of educational and informational programming for kids, and attempt to ensure that advertisements for stuff related to specific cartoons were not broadcast during that specific cartoon. But let's be clear about one thing. Educational and informational content is not, in and of itself, a bad thing. In fact, you're soaking in it right now. Just a few years later, in 1995, the FCC attempted to strengthen the CTA since it seemed the broadcasters weren't actually taking the 1990 regulations seriously. The FCC proposed that stations be required to air a minimum of 3 hours of children's educational programming per week. Networks, of course, pushed back against these accusations, arguing that many of them were already in compliance, if not exceeding the required amount of educational and informational content, admittedly working within the gray area of subjectivity as to what could really be considered educational and informational. Could one argue that Batman is technically an educational show? Were the Ghostbusters informational? How wholesome and moral were the Transformers? In 1996, Congress implemented the Children's Programming Report, chock full of new regulations and obligations, clarified what actually did count as educational, set the specific age demographic range at 16 and younger, and codified the requirement that all commercial television stations had to broadcast at least 3 hours of regularly scheduled content per week between the hours of 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. As of January 2nd, 1997, stations had to label those shows on air and provide appropriate information to the TV listing providers. Oh, and it goes on. They had to put together and publish a quarterly public report that covered everything they had aired the previous quarter and what their plans were for the upcoming quarter. They needed a point of contact established for viewers to reach out to with questions or concerns, additional costs, additional responsibilities, additional potential places where they could unintentionally violate a federal regulation and risk a fine. Of course, fair or not, none of that applied to cable TV, which, along with these new regulations and several other factors, would hasten the end of Saturday morning cartoons. Look, there's a lot of reasons why Saturday morning cartoons didn't survive. It's easy to say government regulations killed it, but that's not the whole story. Yes, regulations were a part of it, but so was the growth of cable, the growth of home video, the growth of video game consoles, the shift of animation resources back to the theater in the early 90s, as it proved to be a greater return on investment. And regardless of what happened, the landscape today in 2018 would have ultimately killed it or forced it to change into something else anyway. Any kind of content, cartoons or otherwise, is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The consumer is empowered, for better or for worse, to seek out their own source of entertainment at the time of their choosing with the subject matter of their choosing. The choices are now made by the holders of the technology, which is simultaneously awesome and one of the worst things ever conceived of by humans. If you wonder why broadcast animation isn't what it used to be, it's because there is no economically viable formula anymore, no single place to collect those advertising revenue dollars. Things have to be less expensive to produce than ever, shorter with a wider audience. Unless, of course, you're a historically well-performing mega brand with global awareness like Star Wars, Transformers, Marvel superheroes, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, or Toy Galaxy. Saturday morning cartoons dominated at the only time in history that they could have. Corporate America used it to sell their brands, kids used it for its escapism and brilliance of imaginative characters, stories, and adventures. While the cartoons they showed were the feature, the real importance to both sides of the screen was the convergence of everyone around a single entertainment source, leading to a shared experience. Saturday morning cartoons were a cultural phenomenon that emerged organically from the growth of a revolutionary technology and the habits of the consumers who engaged with it. It was a collaboration of individual networks, advertisers, and artists conspiring to compel a specific demographic to advocate for targeted redistribution of their parents' financial resources, yes, but it was also a lot of fun.
The ultimate threat to the universe is here.
I am Hordak, and this is my evil horde.
Leech! Mantenna!
Their
Twizzler!
evil even scares me, Hordak, my friend. The evil horde has no friends.
The Evil Horde, new from the Masters of the Universe collection. All figures each sold separately.
Let me out of here!
From Mattel.
Decades before Wreck-It Ralph visualized the world on the other side of the video game screen, Saturday mornings were host to another animated hero and his adventures fighting against the pixelated forces of evil. It was cross-promotional marketing for all kinds of Nintendo products, driven by a team of producers whose depth of familiarity with those products was seemingly limited to the names on the boxes. It was a series that managed to make it to broadcast despite legal issues plaguing the production before, during, and after its creation. Hi, I'm Dan Larson, and this is the history of Captain N, the Game Master. Captain N, the Game Master hit televisions in September of 1989, propelled by the astronomical success of the Nintendo Entertainment System. Released in the United States in 1986, the Nintendo Entertainment System reinvented the American video game market and crushed nearly every other toy and game option available at retail. The console and games were such a huge commercial success that it was only a matter of time before their influence was seen in every other realm of pop culture, from comic books to toys to cartoons. Captain N, the Game Master was produced by Deke Entertainment, the folks who brought you Inspector Gadget, Mask, Care Bears, Jason the Wheeled Warriors, Pole Position, and many others, like the Real Ghostbusters, Dennis the Menace, Alf the Animated Series, and many others, like Cops, Starcom, G.I. Joe, Real American Hero, The Get Along Gang, and many others, like Popples, Kissy Fur, Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling, Rainbow Bright, and many others, like the concept for the series was simple. Kevin Keane, an average American teenager from California, is playing Mike Tyson's Punch-Out on his Nintendo Entertainment System with his dog Duke, when suddenly he and his dog Duke are sucked into the ultimate warp zone, a vortex surging from their television, which transports them to a realm called Videoland. Here they meet and join forces with a team of all-star characters from some of the most popular titles currently available from everyone's favorite home entertainment system. Simon Belmont from Konami's Castlevania, Mega Man from Capcom's Mega Man, and Kid Icarus from Nintendo's Kid Icarus. Kevin is proclaimed to be the hero of destiny, known as Captain N by a talking Nintendo Power Glove, and he arrives fully armed with his Nintendo Light Zapper, Nintendo D-pad controller belt buckle, and a totally on-brand Letterman jacket sporting a big letter N for Northridge, California High School, home of the Fightin' Fish, but also Nintendo. Captain N, Duke the Dog, and all of Team N must fight against the forces of evil led by Mother Brain from Nintendo's Metroid to protect Princess Lana, an original creation designed for the show, and return Videoland to its proper place as a peaceful monarchy. Mother Brain is this close to conquering all of Videoland once and for all. The Palace of Power, Princess Lana, and Team N are making a final stand against total domination. Lots of other characters and Nintendo products and references make appearances throughout the series, but there is an inescapable feeling that something isn't quite right. If this really is a marketing ploy to sell more games, more Nintendo Entertainment Systems, why don't the characters look more like the characters in the actual games that are the intended subject of the weekly half-hour sales pitch? And why is the word Nintendo never, ever mentioned by anyone in the show, or for that matter, in the title of the show itself? The circumstances behind the creation of the Captain N animated series are questionable at best, a muddled corporate clusterfuck at worst. Captain Nintendo first appeared in Nintendo Power Magazine, the magazine for tips, tricks, maps, news, comic strips, and industry insights straight from Nintendo themselves. Kids, ask your parents what magazines were and why it was so important to have tips, tricks, and maps. Captain Nintendo was originally created by Nintendo Power Magazine editor Randy Studdard. Randy pitched the idea of Captain Nintendo as the brand representative marketing character of Nintendo up to and including the fight against Mother Brain. Instead of a game-playing kid from California, Captain Nintendo would have been a Nintendo employee who had the power of temporarily bringing characters and items from various games to life in the real world. The story Randy wrote, featuring these characters, was published in Nintendo Power issues 3 and 4 in 1988 and 1989. Nintendo decided to use the general idea for the character of Captain Nintendo as the basis for the cartoon Captain N, the Game Master. They also decided that, since they already technically owned the idea submitted by Randy Studdard, that he was not due any rights, credit, or payment. Kids, ask your parents why you should always have a lawyer present before sharing your intellectual property with anyone, especially corporate executives who employ you. Deke was already early in development of a Nintendo-themed cartoon that would have followed the adventures of the title character from the game Paperboy. It was going to be called Buddy Boy and would have featured a rotating cast of Nintendo characters traversing a dimensional portal bridging the Nintendo world and the real world, and just happened to be located in Buddy Boy's closet. Captain N was lining up to be a TV star, while Captain Nintendo was the name that Randy Studdard was continuing to use while answering questions about various games in the viewer mail pages of Nintendo Power Magazine. Meanwhile, in Washington, throughout the 1980s, cartoon studios and toy manufacturers had been working very closely to coordinate their efforts to produce cartoons built around the mythology of their respective toy lines. You may have heard about a few of them on this show right here, hosted by me.
Me. So feeble at the end.
Parents groups and educators had become increasingly concerned about the number of hours that children were watching television, how little of it could be considered educational. Furthermore, the content of most of the entertainment being sold to kids was seen as blatant long-form advertising that served no purpose but to sell toys. As the 80s drew to a close and the 90s loomed, it was clear that legislators were going to force change on the animation industry, preventing the continued practice of using children's programming to sell directly to kids. A show called Captain Nintendo would have been a prime candidate to be terminated once it aired, if it aired at all. Captain N, on the other hand, walks a fine line by removing all direct references to the word Nintendo. They were able to skirt around the final piece of legislation, the Children's Television Act, which was signed in 1990, the year after Captain N debuted. What actually arrived on television in 1989 is reflective of the process that it took to produce it. Were the characters the most important part? Was the branding the most important part? Was the mythology the most important part? The final product bears almost no connection to the in-game personas of the characters. The cartoon was seemingly developed as a cartoon first, independent of any marketing edict, forcing adherence to a style guide or character models in line with the games themselves.
You want to do that one again?
Designers were not given any mandates as to character models or guidelines, just make interesting characters and an interesting cartoon. By the way, here's a list of their names and basic bullet points. Voice actors base their performances on the designs of the characters, not on the games themselves. Lack of marketing consistency is further evident in the comic book series published by Valiant Comics, which only features characters from Nintendo-branded games. No Capcom Mega Man, no Konami Simon Belmont. While the Valiant comic book was loosely based on the show, it had more freedom within the narrative and action due to the lack of restrictions that were in place for comics as opposed to TV. Season 1 and 2 of Captain N were released on DVD nearly 20 years later in 2007. They are considered the complete series and sold separately from Season 3 because technically Season 3 is a different show. Season 1 and 2 episodes were full 22-minute episodes, where Season 3 episodes are 11-minute shorts coupled together with similarly short shorts of the new Super Mario World. Why the long wait? The DVD releases required extensive re-editing of several of the original episodes. There's a lot of very popular music that is very expensive to license included in the series. In 1989, no thought was given to acquiring long-term licensing for the songs used in the episodes because there was no reason to. Streaming services and DVD collections of complete seasons weren't a thing. Every episode that had a song that needed licensing had to be re-edited to allow it to clear legal for release in 2007. For the age group that Nintendo was targeting, there was no better place to increase exposure than on Saturday morning cartoons. Despite potential legal barriers, Captain N found the ultimate warp zone to our world via Saturday mornings. While he never became the brand marketing character for Nintendo, for a brief period during the early years of the explosive growth of Nintendo in America, he was a very important piece of the puzzle. A franchise plagued by accusations of occult inspiration, a game that some believe blurred the lines between fantasy and reality that became too real in the minds of the players. Fraught with monsters, demons, spirits, dragons and wizards, skeletons and goblins, and creaky doors deep within trap-laden labyrinths. So haunted and perilous, so seductive and corruptive that it was a perfect fit for Saturday morning cartoons. Hi, I'm Dan Larson, and this is the history of the Dungeons & Dragons animated series. Dungeons & Dragons was an animated series that ran for 27 episodes from 1983 to 1985. It was created by Kevin Paul Coates and Dennis Marks, developed for television by Mark Avanier, who would have spent more time on it, but he had to move on to his much more successful show, Garfield and Friends. Mark wrote the pilot episode titled The Night of No Tomorrow, establishing all of the major characters and relationships, but more importantly, he took a previously existing, overly complex initial concept for the series and boiled it down to its essence, something with a simple formula that could be executed by the other writers who would follow him on the series. It was in that distillation of complexity that the general concepts of Dungeons & Dragons, the game, transformed into an easily consumable, relatable, and safe entertainment product. It was good for the brand at large, given the assertions from parents groups that it was somehow dangerous. Dungeons & Dragons began as a role-playing game in the mid-70s, but became a cultural phenomenon, selling hundreds of thousands of copies by 1982. Yes, there were already dice-based war games in existence for decades, but D&D made the move into suburban living rooms with actual televised commercials and rules for kids as young as 10. It was in that appeal to children that some parents began to take issue. A group called Bothered About Dungeons & Dragons was founded by Patricia Pulling after her son committed suicide in 1982. She believed that D&D was responsible for his death after he had begun playing the game at school. There was major network coverage of suicides and murders that were alleged to have been related to involvement in the game. Tom Hanks even starred in a film called Mazes and Monsters in 1982, which dramatized the story of James Dallas Egbert, who, it was reported, attempted to kill himself in the tunnels at the university he was attending. Gary Gygax himself went on 60 Minutes opposite Patricia Pulling to defend D&D as a positive creative experience that encouraged the use of imagination and problem solving. For more on the history of Dungeons & Dragons, the game, be sure to check out our video, The Tragedies and Triumphs in the History of Dungeons & Dragons. TSR, the company that owned Dungeons & Dragons, sought to capitalize on that popularity, that exposure for the brand, even if part of that exposure was driven by the controversies that followed the game at every mention. TSR established TSR Entertainment, which would become D&D Entertainment, with the explicit purpose of licensing Dungeons & Dragons to Hollywood productions. TSR, in cooperation with LJN Toys, developed a line of action figures inspired by Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, the game. They varied in size from non-posable plastic miniature figurines to fully articulated 5- and 6-inch figures, and even a full-size Fortress of Fangs interactive playset. The figures produced under license by LJN represented some of the main character classes, some key player characters, and a whole slew of monsters to be used in conjunction with campaign modules specifically designed for those action figures. The designs drew their inspiration from the original artwork featured in the D&D guides and character descriptions. The action figure line was a more traditional play-oriented approach to the fantasy combat that was a major part of the game.
In the eerie world of deep, dark dungeons, mystery and magic seem real. There's good against evil with advanced Dungeons & Dragons action figures. War Duke, Kellic, Strongheart, and Bronze Dragon, each sold separately.
Beware, Strongheart. You will cast an evil spell and steal the treasure. Fool! Evil is no match for good. The treasure is safe.
Advanced Dungeons & Dragons action figures, Kellic, War Duke, Bronze Dragon, Strongheart, each sold separately from LJN.
Meanwhile, Marvel Productions picked up the Dungeons & Dragons license from D&D Entertainment to begin development of an animated series, but revision after revision resulted in an overly complicated mess that was in dire need of focusing from a fresh perspective. Under significant time constraints, pressured to get a fully realized concept that could be sold to a network, Marvel Productions gave everything they had to Mark Evanier. In Mark's own words, quote, "In the development process, as the format is being worked out and characters are added, deleted, or defined, you often get lost in the 93rd revision. The CBS folks felt that Dungeons & Dragons was almost there as a series, but that it needed some work from a fresh mind. I have an extremely fresh mind to go with my fresh mouth," end quote. Dungeons & Dragons was different from the normal expected process for the development of a cartoon. Usually, the toy line is the first thing that is developed, and the show and all the supporting media follow with the goal of selling the toy line. In this case, the main product, the game, was already established. The figure line followed again as a means to support the game. The animated series came in at the end to support the toy line and the game to broaden the audience and recognition of the brand, which all leads back to the game. Dungeons & Dragons, the animated series, followed the adventures of 6 friends who thought they were taking an innocent trip on the Dungeons & Dragons ride at the carnival. Halfway through the tunnel, they are magically transported, Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe style, to the world of Dungeons & Dragons, where they will spend the rest of their lives trying to find a way home. See, it's funny because if they had just listened to the concerned parent groups about the dangers of all things D&D, they never would have ended up in this mess in the first place. Upon arrival in D&D land, they are greeted by Tiamat, the 5-headed dragon, Uni the unicorn, and their host and guide, Dungeon Master. Each of the 6 friends are given a character class and a signature weapon. Hank becomes a ranger with a magical bow, Eric a cavalier with a magic shield, Diana the acrobat with a magic staff. Albert becomes Presto the wizard with a magic hat, Sheila a thief with a cloak of invisibility, and Bobby, her younger brother, is a barbarian with a magical club. They are tasked by Dungeon Master with not only finding their way home, but also fighting against the evil Venger and the dark forces at his command. And all of that setup is masterfully done within the opening theme for the show. The star-studded voice cast included Willie Ames and Adam Rich, both formerly of the comedy drama 8 is Enough, Don Most, who starred as Ralph Malph on Happy Days, and they were supported by animation stalwarts like Peter Optimus Prime Cullen and Frank Megatron Welker, a sentence that types itself whenever we cover an 80s animated series. Dungeons & Dragons had arrived and had broken through the attempts to prevent it from reaching the hearts and minds of children the world over. Its tentacles of corruption were now in every aspect of daily lives. This is tentacles, right? These are talons, not tentacles. Dungeons & Dragons board games, Dungeons & Dragons Halloween costumes, Dungeons & Dragons stickers, coloring books, color forms, storybooks. Look, even if Dungeons & Dragons was a conduit of all the evils of Satanism and the black magics of hell itself up until this moment, that spell was broken the day Dungeons & Dragons became shrinky-dinks. Evil is strong, but it cannot survive both shrinking and dinking. For all the cross-promotion, for all the licensing, for all the supporting products that made it to the shelves, very little of it featured the characters from the cartoon itself. Characters from the game and the action figure line featured prominently. No one would blame you for assuming that Strongheart was the main hero in the cartoon, battling against his arch-nemesis Warduke. That's the visual story that plays out on the rest of the merchandising. But LJN never produced figures for the characters that were unique to the cartoon. No Venger, no Dungeon Master, no Hank, Eric, Sheila, Bobby, or Uni. No magical roller coaster that features our realm on one side and the realm of Dungeons & Dragons on the other. Strongheart, Warduke, and a few of the other toy and game-related characters made cameo appearances on the show, but that's it for crossover. Some merchandise, including a series of small, non-posable PVC figures, were released in Spain, but they are exceedingly rare and command a hefty price in good condition on the secondary market today. The most likely reason why LJN never produced action figures based on the Dungeons & Dragons cartoon is the most obvious one. They couldn't. They didn't have the rights to the characters. LJN's line of advanced Dungeons & Dragons figures were released in the beginning of 1983, as were a lot of D&D related products. The D&D cartoon began airing in late 1983. Any licensing agreements created prior to Marvel and TSR co-producing the D&D cartoon would not have included any elements from it. It was possible to write Strongheart and Warduke into a few episodes of the cartoon, which they did. It was not possible to retroactively include the cartoon characters in any of the licensing agreements. And not for nothing, but the cartoon was already pushing the envelope with respect to the content directed at young children. Michael Reeves, writer of 7 episodes, has explained that the production crew, quote, took the show about as far as you could go on kids' TV at the time. As an example, the script for The Dragon's Graveyard, in which the kids contemplate killing Venger in order to find a way home, caused a battle royale with broadcast standards and practices, end quote. And while parents groups still represented a very small minority of the parenting audience, they were also a very noisy minority. The previously mentioned Bothered About Dungeons & Dragons teamed up with the National Coalition on Television Violence to ask the Federal Trade Commission and Federal Communications Commission for regulations warning consumers of the possible violent effects of the game and the Saturday morning cartoon. Despite all that, Dungeons & Dragons led its time slot for 2 years. It's rare that any show can get more than 1 season. D&D did just that, and without the support of an action figure line that needed constant refreshing of characters. After 27 episodes over the course of 3 years, ratings, predictably, began to decline. It was canceled without the kids ever returning home from the realm of Dungeons & Dragons. There was no final episode depicting the kids' return home, but Marvel Productions did hire Michael Reeves to write a final script. Michael wrote 7 of the 27 episodes, so he's just as much an authority as anyone involved in the production, so if you want to consider it canon, you have a pretty strong case to do so. While it has never been animated, Michael himself made the script available online, and there are several fan-produced audio recordings, one of which features Katie Lee reprising her role as Sheila. A simple search on YouTube will give you the closure you've been looking for all these decades later. Since 1985, the franchise has been mostly dormant. In 1996, TSR published a limited series of promotional comics. The Forgotten Realms issue, The Grand Tour, features a cameo by the characters from the cartoon still living in the world of Dungeons & Dragons as adults. TSR and all D&D related products were purchased by Wizards of the Coast in 1997. In 1999, Wizards of the Coast was purchased by Hasbro. And that brings us up to 2018, when Iron Studios announced that they would be releasing a series of combining diorama statues of the characters from the cartoon due out late in 2019. Dungeons & Dragons as a Saturday morning cartoon transformed the reputation of the franchise through the humor, action, visibility, and general superheroization of the concepts. The marketing blitz across all manner of merchandise. D&D was normalized. The cartoon showed that Dungeons & Dragons could be a mainstream entertainment brand, the same as Marvel or Disney. Ultimately, the show was a brilliant PR move to put a new public face on the reputation of Dungeons & Dragons. The cartoon, more than anything else, is responsible for softening the image of D&D for fun and profit, for introducing a lot of the language of the game into common household use. It is no longer a thing whispered about in the same context as suicides and satanic rituals. It was the show on Saturday mornings, right after Pac-Man and before Pole Position.
The battle of the sectors continues. Rosfax is no match for the defenses of the ancients. Dargon's armies push the evil sectors back toward the hive. The monster Nar swallows up Skeeto. Pinsor evens his score with Skulk. But Pinsor doesn't see the giant destructor ball. Is this the end of Dargon's loyal friend? Watch the next episode of Sectors by Coleco.
No one owns the concept of a bunch of robots combining to form a larger super robot, or the themes of family and teamwork derived through the mechanical process of robots physically joining together to overcome an obstacle or fight other robots. These ideas have been around for decades as part of many different brands, and while they do inspire each other, it's hard to suggest that any one of them outright copied any one of the others. Legally, there is some squishiness with respect to inspiration, homage, tribute, or even simultaneous invention. Squishy though it may be, with enough money and the threat of prolonged legal action, even that squishiness can be lethal. Hi, I'm Dan Larson, and this is the history of the mighty Orbots. The Mighty Orbots, not to be confused with Orgus, Orbits, or The Mighty Roy Orbison, is a 13-episode animated series that originally ran Saturday mornings in the United States on ABC from November to December of 1984.
Who are you calling a cootie queen, you lint liquor?
It was developed as a joint production between Japanese animation studio TMS Entertainment and American producers Intermedia Entertainment. It was an original creation utilizing the look, tone, and feel of many Japanese animated series, but intended for the American audience who had had a bad case of Japanese robot fever, and the only cures were more Japanese robots, or abstinence. The Mighty Orbots are a group of sentient robots that can combine to form a giant super robot, also called Mighty Orbots. See, the group of Mighty Orbots, plural, is called the Mighty Orbots, and also the combined super robot is also called Mighty Orbots. So like, if you said, hey, can I have some Mighty Orbots? I would say, do you want them separate or combined? You would say, yes, please. Rob Simmons, the main human character, is also the inventor of the Mighty Orbots. He plays a Clark Kent Superman role within the world of the show. On the surface, he's a mild-mannered robot designer, but when duty calls, he serves the Galactic Patrol as commander of the Mighty Orbots, with the sole authority and ability to summon them to battle in defense of Earth. See, the 23rd century, where this story takes place, is a time of robots and aliens, and destruction and terror, kind of a good news, bad news thing. The Galactic Patrol serve as the defenders of the United Planets against the evil forces of Shadow and their leader, Lord Umbra, not to be confused with Umbros or Ombre. He's a giant cyborganic computer depicted as a five-eyed jellyfish kind of face with a gravelly voice, short temper, and, despite his protestations, a high tolerance for his plans being thwarted by the heroes. The Mighty Orbots roster includes feisty Ono, who serves as Rob's sidekick and co-pilot, as well as the heart of the giant combined robot. Mighty Tor is the brute strength of the group and also the torso and head in combined mode. Versatile Bort is like a Swiss Army knife, if you will. Like, I don't want to say that he transforms per se for legal reasons, but he does have the ability to shift shapes beyond his function as a leg of Mighty Orbots. Elusive Boo can manipulate energies to create force fields or turn invisible. She is joined by Bo, the master of the elements, as the two arms on the team, while Crunch, the metal muncher, finishes things off as a voracious energy converter, leg, and backup power source. Orbots is an anagram of robots, but also of brutes. Brutes was the working title when the pilot episode was shopped around to see if there was a network interested in picking it up for syndication. The 6-minute short is very close to the finished product, with most of the details in place. The brutes collectively combine to form Super Brutes, not to be confused with Brutes Campbell, Brutes Wayne, or Brutes Boxleitner. Once the show was sold, the details fell into place and the name was changed to the Mighty Orbots, and coincidentally enough, it premiered the same month as Transformers and the classic five-lion form of Voltron called Voltron. The Mighty Orbots was created by Barry Glassner and written by Buzz Dixon, Michael Reeves, Mark Scott Zachary, and others, several writers with a combined portfolio that includes just about every animated series created between 1980 and 2000, especially if it involved toy-based products. It was directed by Osamu Dezaki, who had television and movie credits that go back to the 1960s, including but not limited to Astro Boy, Lupin III, the original Frosty the Snowman, Guy King, Rainbow Bright, and Bionic 6. His work, his style would influence generations of animators. The Mighty Orbots had one of the most memorable theme songs by design. Composers Thomas Chase and Steve Rucker also worked on Gummy Bears, The Real Ghostbusters, Pirates of Dark Water, Captain Planet, Bionic 6, and lots of other stuff. A lot of industry veterans from both the United States and Japan came together to bring the Mighty Orbots to life, to help make it visually and narratively different, to make the Mighty Orbots into something more substantial than what was already being shown on a regular basis for super robot fare on American television. This wasn't a show cut together from previously existing footage repackaged for American audience the way fellow combiner Beast King Go Lion in Japan became Voltron in the US. And it wasn't merely a superficial instructional series of commercials designed to sell toys disguised as entertainment like Transformers. Because unlike both of those shows, there was no toy line to be sold. The Mighty Orbots, the show itself, was the product for sale.
Here, join the fun as the Mighty Orbots patrol the universe in another surprise-filled adventure.
Sounds good enough to eat.
Oh no! Crunch! Orbot, stop him before he eats the whole show!
And if that was the end of the story, just some talented creative people making an original show about a boy and the combining robots he invented, all saving the world together. Maybe there's 2 seasons. Maybe there is a toy line from Mattel who did acquire the master toy license. Maybe there's a live-action series in development now today, and we're all talking about how it could be cool if they can at least get the emotional beats right. In 1985, while reruns of the initial 13 episodes of The Mighty Orbots were still airing on ABC, Tonka, the company that owns the GoBots, took TMS Entertainment to court for what it alleged were false designation of origin, trademark infringement, unfair competition, and deceptive trade practices. Tonka believed that the name The Mighty Orbots was too close to their trademark branding, GoBots, Mighty Robots, Mighty Vehicles. Tonka asserted that TMS Entertainment was aware of the existence of GoBots branding in 1984 before the cartoon aired, and that subsequently this was a calculated move by TMS to take advantage of the value already built up by the GoBots brand since its debut a year prior in 1983. A bold claim for sure coming from Tonka, a company whose entire brand was built on the value already built into toys licensed from Japan. GoBots were known as Machine Robo before they were imported and repackaged for the US market, but that gave Tonka extra motivation to fully protect their brand in court, even if the argument was a bit squishy. Tonka, based out of Minnesota, asserted that each viewing of the Mighty Orbots cartoon by individual members of the audience, nearly 700,000 instances, constituted an infringement of their rights to which they, Tonka, were due compensation in some form. They believed that if this was the case for their state, then surely it was the case for every other state that GoBots were being sold in. Tonka was already facing the threat of losing market share to the incursion of Hasbro's popular Transformers, Matchbox's release of Voltron, and others. If they could stop one of the competitors with a cease and desist and maybe tack on some damages, they might survive the rising tide of changeable robots. Spoiler alert! Were the Mighty Orbots in any way derivative of the GoBots robots? The GoBots did have a combiner called Puzzler, but that wasn't released until 1985 after the Mighty Orbots aired. But beyond providing themselves protection for the launch of Puzzler, Tonka might have been thinking more strategically. The entire line of Tonka GoBots products depended on Machine Robo items licensed from a company called Poppy, which had recently been acquired by Bandai. It is possible that Tonka was interested in licensing other items from Bandai, like a 6-robot combiner called Godmars that looked an awful lot like the Mighty Orbots. Godmars aired in Japan in 1981 and 1982. It was the story of a baby named Mars who was sent to Earth by an evil emperor to grow up amongst humans, but then one day fulfill his destiny as the pilot of a robot called Gaia that was actually a bomb with the power to destroy the entire planet. To protect him, Mars's father sent 5 other robots to Earth that he could utilize to combine with his robot Gaia into a planetary defender called Godmars, while he worked for the elite Earth Defense Force called Crasher Squad. Squishily argued as it was, the action by Tonka was enough to deter Mattel from pursuing the release of any product, while potential additional litigation loomed. Mattel produced a prototype that wasn't a repaint of Bandai's Godmars figure, but it was really close. If Mattel had been able to acquire the license to the Godmars toy, a deluxe Mighty Orbots toy probably would have just been a repaint or reissue of Godmars in a Mighty Orbots box. Ultimately, TMS Entertainment settled the suit out of court. While ratings were okay, the Mighty Orbots didn't have the strength to take out time-slot competitors, the Muppet Babies, and the Smurfs. No one at TMS, Intermedia, ABC, or Mattel were interested in what could be an expensive fight against Tonka. It was better business to simply move on. There were a few unlicensed items released around the world, including a tiny robot called Obot in Korea, as well as a deluxe Godmars figure in China with Mighty Orbots packaging, a very rare piece that offered a glimpse into what might have been if the licensing worked out in favor of TMS and Intermedia. The entire Mighty Orbots series, all 13 episodes, were released in 2018 on DVD and can still be found online from various retailers. If you're a longtime fan of the Mighty Orbots, or you're just discovering them today, right this moment, don't hold your breath for anyone doing anything else with the license as long as Warner Brothers still owns it, and people who remember Godmars, GoBots, and trademark law still live and walk among us. "12 years after Tron, 18 years before Wreck-It Ralph, there was an animated series that built on the premise of the prior and explored some of the possibilities of the latter, a fully realized digital world that exists inside computers, with programs interpreted as living beings inhabiting a thriving metropolis. A world of beings that simultaneously depends on users from our world as the creators of everything that is, and fears us as all-powerful destroyers we can and sometimes must be. Hi, I'm Dan Larson, and this is the history of Reboot. There are 3 eras in the story of Reboot. It began in 1994 and extends all the way through 2018, with frequent extended breaks that made it very difficult for the mythology to find its audience, or rather, for its audience to find it. The first era began as a fully computer animated series in 1994. It was the first fully computer animated series ever. It's the story of a guardian named Bob, his friends Dot and Enzo Matrix, the wise advisor Fong, and a whole bunch of binomes and sprites which make up the general populace of the city called Mainframe. Bob the Guardian is a program compelled to protect the city of Mainframe from malicious intrusions, aka virus programs, most notably the brother-sister tandem Megabyte and Hexadecimal. With the help of his wristband-based key tool called Glitch, he can manipulate the digital world in ways that other inhabitants cannot. One of Bob's responsibilities, beyond thwarting the plans of viruses trying to infect the system, is to compete in games against users. See, as the day-to-day events of life in the city of Mainframe take place, occasionally a giant energy cube, a game cube, appears in the sky and overwhelms an entire block and all of the inhabitants therein. These game cubes, a term coined by Reboot years before Nintendo's usage in 2001, are manifestations of the users, people in our world, starting a video game. Anybody within the proximity of the cube when it lands is drafted into whatever game the user has chosen and must fight for their survival. Once inside the game cube, guardians like Bob reboot to act as one of the game characters to help fight back against the users and prevent the entire block of the city from being destroyed and the inhabitants becoming nullified. Reboot was created by Gavin Blair, Ian Pearson, Phil Mitchell, and John Grace. It was produced by Mainframe Entertainment, Alliance Communications, and BLT Productions. If you're old, like producer Greg and I, you're probably already very familiar with the early work of Blair and Pearson. They created the wireframe character animation for the music video Money for Nothing by Dire Straits, released in 1985. They even call back to it featuring the 2 appliance delivery men, Sal and Harv, as a band called The Dyers in the episode Talent Night during the first season. But 1985 CG character animation wasn't up to the level they wanted for a fully animated series. It would be 6 more years before the processing power and rendering would get even close to the degree of detail they needed to tell their story, and another 3 years before they would be able to create full episodes efficiently enough to put together a series in 1994.
Also, you got to wait for the technology to be there to do this kind of thing. Well, how long was the idea being worked on for, like, what, 10 years or something? 8 to 10 years?
Yeah. The Reboot adventures take place here in the Mainframe. One of the best things about living inside a computer is you can surf the static on your hoverboard if you're good enough.
That said, the simple blocky look is responsible for Reboot being set in the computer world to begin with. The limitations of computer animation to render lifelike textures, organic shapes, and complex environments inspired the creators to create a story around a world that was supposed to look like that. Reboot began its broadcast life on Canadian television channel YTV, and then soon after in the United States on ABC television, and that is where the chaos begins. In order to get something to air on US television, especially television aimed at young viewers, you have to clear the gauntlet of the Board of Standards and Practices. Many a program knows what it's like to be roasted in the depths of the Board of Standards and Practices, I can tell you. The board's main job is to make sure that there is absolutely nothing that could potentially have a negative influence on kids in any way. The rule, probably, is don't show sex if you can show drugs. Don't show drugs if you can show violence. Don't show violence if you can show racing. Don't show racing if you can show people dancing. Don't show dancing because it's too much like sex. Repeat. The creators of Reboot had a story they wanted to tell in a way that they wanted to tell it. These standards and practices made it difficult to do that. Female characters had to be desexualized because, they were female. Kissing wasn't allowed because that might lead to dancing. If there had to be a violent conflict, it was preferred that it be resolved non-violently. Reboot aired one full season in the United States before being canceled by new ABC owner Disney. The creative team was halfway through production of season 2 when they found out about the cancellation and spent the rest of season 2 production trying to reconcile the newfound creative freedom with the uncertainty of the future, even going so far as to reveal in the final episode of season 2 that Megabyte's ships were called ABCs. Where season 1 and the first part of season 2 were episodic, the last part of season 2 was a longer story arc not previously possible as part of ABC's Saturday morning cartoon lineup. Reboot was going off the air in the US, but not in Canada. Production of the show would go on and would be better for it.
It's the ABCs! They've turned on us! Treacherous dogs!
But it wouldn't go on immediately. Mainframe Entertainment took some time to work on a property with a bit more name recognition. Hasbro's Transformers Beast Wars, a bold new direction for the Transformers brand, and a potentially much larger audience for computer-generated serialized animated storytelling. Season 3 of Reboot was broadcast in Canada on YTV in 1997. It was the first look at what Reboot could be without the burden of US standards and practices, and allowed the creators to move characters forward in ways they couldn't previously, letting them grow, upgrade, change, and evolve over time with storylines that continued from episode to episode instead of being resolved in 22 minutes. The show became noticeably darker, more mature, with heavier themes, not to mention the degree to which computer animation had improved in the few years since Reboot first aired. Season 3 saw more complex and more detailed character models and environments. Season 3 also let the creators end the series their way. The city of Mainframe has been taken over by the viruses Megabyte and Hexadecimal. It is the darkest possible ending for the city, the characters, and the show. The only way that Bob believes he can save it is to intentionally let the whole system crash in the hopes that the user will restart or reboot the entire world. 2 years later, in 1999, Cartoon Network picked up Reboot Season 3, and US audiences finally got to see what Canadians had already been talking about for 2 years. After airing Season 3, they also aired Seasons 1 and 2, giving viewers a second chance to connect with a show that they might not have been exposed to the first time around. And then it was canceled. Again. But hey, canceled from US television didn't mean the end the first time, and it didn't mean the end this time. Despite a proper series ending at the end of Season 3, 3 years later, in 2001, a fourth season was released in the form of 2 90-minute direct-to-DVD movies. This fourth season would allow the creators to dig a little deeper into the origins of the city of Mainframe, villains Megabyte and Hexadecimal, and give an even larger sense to the world within the computers. Cartoon Network once again served as the home of the series in the United States, breaking up the 2 movies into 8 episodes. Those 8 episodes were shown at night during the Toonami animation block.
Fast forward, Reboot star!
Warning, incoming game.
Mainframe is mine.
Oh my. Sprites, we need your help! Enzo, your zipboard.
/backspace now.
Scared, Mega Brit?
Alphanumeric!
Huh?
Bob used glitch!
Glitch! Why? Thanks for the data.
Get him!
Way to go, Sprites!
Yes!
Reboot action figures, each sold separately.
In 1995 and 1996, Irwin Toys, a toy distributor and manufacturer based in Canada, released a series of Mighty Max-style mini playsets, as well as an entire line of action figures based on the show. While it wasn't necessarily a show designed to sell toys, the best way to market your cartoon is to have some kind of presence in the toy section. And it would have been an absolute crime not to release a video game. In 1998, Electronic Arts released Reboot: Countdown to Chaos for the Sony PlayStation. It takes place early in Bob's tenure as a guardian of the city of Mainframe and was developed by the team that developed the show. Despite the overall negative reaction to the gameplay, the story is canon and was developed after the restrictions from these standards and practices had been removed. For the content-starved Reboot fan, there is plenty to appreciate. A final line of 10-inch figures were released in 2001 to coincide with the release of the 4th and final season. That last episode would be the final last episode of the first era of Reboot. Reboot's second era began with 3 of the 4 original creators of the show leaving Mainframe Entertainment. Pearson, who had been CEO, left in 2001, Blair, the director of operations, in 2002, Mitchell, vice president of operations, in 2005. In 2006, Mainframe Entertainment was purchased by Rainmaker Income Fund and was renamed Rainmaker Animation. After 4 seasons of Reboot and an incredible 13-year portfolio of other episodic and feature-length computer-generated animation, including but not limited to Transformers for Hasbro, Barbie for Mattel, and the Spider-Man animated series starring Neil Patrick Harris on MTV, Rainmaker announced that the next step for Reboot would be 3 new Reboot films, with the first to be released in 2008. Rainmaker was going to use the power of the internet to harness the enthusiasm of the existing fan base and cultivate new fans ahead of the films. They promised a bold new direction of openness to the process of making those films, and they were going to start where all successful movie franchises start: a crowd-sourced online comic book. They partnered with ZerosToHeroes.com, who would facilitate a forum for fans to vote on 5 different pitches for potential storylines. Fans could even submit their own ideas and artwork that would then be voted on by that same community. It was the model of creation by committee, surrendering the decision-making process to people who you wouldn't even hire to work for you on that project. What could possibly go wrong? The hope was that they would have the ultimate insight into marketing to fans: what worked, what didn't work, where there were opportunities to improve or make slight changes, what they hadn't taken into consideration. The thing that plagues us throughout all media creation, even today, is that the fans don't actually know what they want until you show it to them. A webcomic called Reboot Code of Honor was the result of all the traffic and voting and votes. Fans were encouraged to read, comment, like, dislike, make suggestions, share, and keep in mind that this wasn't necessarily going to have anything to do with the film that was in production, and oh yeah, that release date is now 2009. In July of 2009, the webcomic was moved out from Zeros to Heroes account-locked access to the official Reboot fan site, where it was available to anyone who wanted to read it. And there it sat, for anyone who wanted to read it. I don't think it's there anymore. I tried to find it and all I got was a page that said I needed to update my Flash player. So none of the 3 potential Reboot films were produced. The website is no longer active, but new Reboot content has been created. Era 3 began in 2013 with the announcement of a new CG live-action hybrid series in development called Reboot: The Guardian Code. Fans were warned ahead of time that this wasn't going to be about the original characters, that if they appeared, they would be relegated to cameo appearances, that, hate to say it, no one was interested in buying an updated CG version of the original show. Reboot: The Guardian Code was not exactly a direct sequel, not exactly a full reboot. It follows a group of high school kids, users, who become guardians fighting against original villains. Virus was not exactly a direct sequel, not exactly a full reboot. It follows a group of high school kids.
Oh, why did they crack?
I'm in a lot of pain right now, so we're just going to finish this and then I'm going to go to the emergency room. Reboot: The Guardian Code was not exactly a direct sequel, but not exactly a full reboot. It follows a group of high school kids, users, who become guardians fighting against original villain Virus, Megabyte, and the forces that brought him back. The first 10-episode season hit Netflix in March of 2018 and YTV in June. It received mixed reviews. Some said the pacing was way too slow. It took way too long to get to callbacks to the original show. Some thought that the animation wasn't even as good as the original show that aired 23 years prior. Some reviewers thought that the inclusion of a longtime Reboot fan as a character that was portrayed as a stereotypical basement-dwelling, game-playing, still-living-at-home nerd was offensive. Wait, these aren't mixed reviews. Not for nothing, but Guardian Code did receive some award nominations, including Outstanding Directorial Achievement by the Directors Guild of Canada, the WGC Award by the Writers Guild of Canada, and a Daytime Emmy nomination for Hannah Vanden Bygart for Outstanding Performer in a Children's Family Viewing or Special Class Program. And the reviews weren't bad enough to stop a second 10-episode season from being released in September of that same year. The real-world Guardians continued to thwart the efforts of Megabyte, once again joined by his sister, Hexadecimal, to corrupt all the computers in the world amidst their daily struggles with homework, hacking, and hormones. In 2010, Shout Factory acquired the home distribution rights for the original Reboot animated series, and in 2011 released the whole thing in a collected box set that, according to the Amazon reviews, would be perfect if not for poor mastering job resulting in pulsating audio that is only noticeable when it's quiet, or when there's music playing, or when people are talking. The Code of Honor webcomic may or may not be on Zeros to Heroes depending on the functionality of your Flash media player, and or if it's not really there. Guardian Code, as of this video, is still on Netflix. With 47 episodes spread out over the course of 7 years of television broadcast time, the original Reboot animated series ended on a cliffhanger. One of the original creators, Gavin Blair, when asked, has declined to comment on what the plans were for Megabyte and all of our heroes, just in case they ever got a chance to tell that story. The original show also received several awards, including Gemini Awards for Best Animated Series and Outstanding Technical Achievement, and nominations for Best Children's or Youth Program Series and Best Sound. In 1995, they won an award of excellence and Best Animated Program by Alliance for Children in Television. Reboot was a technological milestone when it debuted in 1994. It laid the foundation for a company that would go on to develop some of the most widely viewed computer animated content on television, changing the look and feel of cartoon entertainment for an entire generation. It developed a dedicated fan base that kept it alive long enough for producers to believe that it could one day return, reimagined, refreshed, renewed for a new era, a new generation of fans to push it into the next era.
Ryan, got your new cereal.
How's it look, Duke?
All clear. Go for it. Hit it! Introducing G.I. Joe Action Stars brand cereal, a delicious part of this complete breakfast. Crunchy stars that taste great. So, for all you action stars...
Bye, Mom!
G.I. Joe Action Stars.
One of the most visually dynamic and innovative games in the history of, well, games. Unlike anything that had come before it, unlike anything that was contemporary to it. So far ahead of its time that only now, looking back from the future, can we truly appreciate the scope of its achievement as an interactive storytelling experience and a revolutionary piece of art. Hi, I'm Dan Larson, and this is the history of Dragon's Lair. Dragon's Lair is a multimedia franchise created by Rick Dyer and Don Bluth. It began in 1983 with the release of an arcade game, but soon expanded to cartoons, home gaming systems, comic books, and with a little bit of luck, potentially soon a full-length feature film. Dragon's Lair follows the adventures of a knight named Dirk the Daring and his efforts to save Princess Daphne from the clutches of the evil dragon Singe. Along the way, Dirk must battle various minions, creatures, monsters, and defy the odds to survive all manner of traps. For more on the initial game itself, let's get some insight from Game Dave. Dave?
Hey, Game Dave here, and it looks like Toy Galaxy has entered my black hole of space, like, in a galaxy, because my galaxy has games in it.
Flawless victory.
All right, Dragon's Lair originally released in arcades in 1983. You control Dirk the Daring on a quest to rescue Princess Daphne from the clutches of an evil dragon. Avoid deadly death traps, really, what other kinds are there, as you use your quick reflexes to reach that sweet, sweet princess. I mean, look at those video game graphics, aka a cartoon that's playing in front of you. Yeah, is it a game? Is it an interactive movie? Is it simply a memorization scenario designed to squeeze as many quarters as possible from a child's precious pink piggy bank? Yes, yes, yes. In fact, it was 2 credits, 50 cents to play Dragon's Lair. This was the era of mostly single quarter amusements, so clearly you were getting double the experience, right? Well, Dragon's Lair ran on Laserdisc technology. Ooh, the giant discs. It's like records, but for your eyes. And at the time, video games were made with sprites that you could fully control, but they weren't exactly photorealistic. The Laserdisc allowed the high-quality animation to be loaded on screen, which looked amazing. Unfortunately, it limited the game in other ways, like reducing the amount of true interactivity and control that would be allowed. You don't truly control the protagonist, and if you are trying to get a perfect run in the game, you likely aren't paying much attention to the beautiful animation work before your eyes, instead staring mindlessly at the blinking action prompts and pressing left, right, up, down, or sword to guarantee a full playthrough for the on-watching crowd of arcaders. It's the ultimate retro quick-time event game. Unfortunately, it's beautiful to take in, but disappointing in control and interactivity. Much like Dan.
Thanks, Dave. Like the relationship between Toy Galaxy and Game Dave, Dragon's Lair was a result of a partnership between two creators at the top of their talents. On one side, gaming hardware inventor Rick Dyer, and on the other, animation master Don Bluth.
Here's some money. Go see a Star War.
Rick Dyer had been working on a way to create an interactive computer gaming system that allowed the player to take an active role in the outcome of the story. Having been inspired by the text-based computer game Adventure, Rick developed his own mythology around a Lord of the Rings type world called the Secrets of the Lost Woods. He developed a device called the Fantasy Machine, which consisted of a reel-to-reel type of presentation with various 2D illustrations depicting parts of the story. Input from the reader or player would tell the computer which image to display. It was paired with an audio system that would help tell the story, but the device was far too complicated for toy manufacturers to reproduce at a reasonable price.
This was Dyer's first computerized interactive game. It used cash register paper, a good omen of things to come.
The computer would, kind of like a player piano, it would roll the paper forward at a high speed and then stop, and you'd see a picture and some writing, and it would give you a list of choices.
From that, he developed a computerized film strip game, then added sound. It all led to Dragon's Lair, that even with a technical blackout flaw, revolutionized the young industry.
Rick switched to Laserdisc as the preferred format after seeing Astron Built, a Sega game during the 1982 Amusement and Music Operators Association show. Astron Belt was essentially a sprite-based game overlaid on top of a live-action Laserdisc background. It was a brilliant concept with unique visuals, but still had some unrealized potential, just like Game Dave.
It's just a joke, Dan, relax. It's just a joke.
Rick's failure with the toy companies convinced him that there was another element missing from his gaming concept. It wasn't until he saw the movie Secret of NIMH, also in 1982, that the path became clear. He needed dynamic visuals. He needed a story that looked and felt like a big-budget Hollywood animated feature. He wanted that same big-screen magic and excitement. He wanted Don Bluth.
We were trying to find a way to push the entertainment from little dots and squiggles of the Pong and Pac-Man.
Which is where we were at back in those days, yeah.
And my wife and I went to see a film called The Secret of NIMH, and I was just blown away.
Yeah.
And I pointed to the screen, I said, that's who I want to animate Dragon's Lair.
Lucky for him, Don Bluth was available. In 1979, after having worked for Walt Disney on films like Sleeping Beauty, Sword in the Stone, Robin Hood, and The Rescuers, he and several other animators from Disney started a new studio called Don Bluth Productions.
Take a look at Banner, Michael!
They released a short film called Banjo the Woodpile Cat that same year and followed it up with visual effects in the movie Xanadu in 1980. And then, of course, in 1982, their first feature, The Secret of NIMH. And then all the animators in the country went on strike to oppose the outsourcing of work to international animation studios as a cost-cutting measure. Serendipity brought them together, and so Don and Rick began working on a project that neither one really understood 100%. Rick understood the technical aspect of how he wanted the game to play. Don understood the storytelling aspect and how the animation should look. The more they worked together, the more they understood the function and language of each other's world. The more they were able to benefit from each other's strengths.
You have to give the illusion that the game player is in control, when indeed he may not be. But you must give that illusion. I thought, wow, that's right up our alley. That's movie making. Give the illusion, present a moment to him in which he must react, a moment of danger, and then get him to react to that moment at the right moment. Then you'll see another scene in which he is saved from that. I thought, well, that's very interesting. How can I design a game which will present enough of those moments in short little periods of time to where the game becomes exciting and gets him keyed up? And that was the challenge of designing the game.
It took 7 months to produce Dragon's Lair from concept to completion with a budget of just $1.3 million. But the convergence of Rick Dyer and Don Bluth's vision would produce a game that would do $30 million in just 40 days.
The most advanced video game you can play is awaiting your discovery at Showbiz Pizza Place. The princess is held captive, and only the brave knight, Dirk the Daring, can save her. With sophisticated laserdisc animation, you'll move Dirk through the innumerable dangers of the enchanted castle to rescue the beautiful princess. Dragon's Lair, the supreme adventure in video games, brand new at Showbiz Pizza Place.
Can't have a pop culture phenomenon in the 80s without a Saturday morning cartoon. Ruby Spears produced 13 half-hour episodes within the same mythology from the arcade game, but with more time to grow the world. Dirk and Daphne return for the good guys, Singe and several of the minions are back for the bad guys, as is the general feel of the world of Dragon's Lair, if not quite as fluid, lush, and beautiful. The cartoon adds King Ethelred, Dirk's horse Bertram, his squire Timothy, and Sir Hubert Blunt, a rival for Daphne's hand. Interactivity was such an integral part of the game that the cartoon frequently leaves Dirk in cliffhanger situations heading into commercial breaks, situations that ask the viewer to decide what they would do if it were up to them. When the show comes back from commercial break, the viewer gets to see what would have happened if they had made the wrong choice, and what choice Dirk ultimately makes, allowing the show to advance.
With giddy goons advancing from one direction and with mudmen coming from the other, what would you do?
Despite the revolutionary technology and incredible visual effects separating Dragon's Lair from everything else at the arcade, there were unique challenges to maintaining the lifespan of this new style of game, not the least of which were limitations of the hardware and easily memorized patterns that reduced replay value. Within 1 year, many arcade owners called Dragon's Lair a failure, a completely new game called Space Ace, built by the same production team on the same technology and literally a reskinned cabinet, couldn't save the perception of a suddenly dead gaming concept. Dragon's Lair would be kept alive through successive home releases to various home computer formats in 1984, 1986, 87, 89, 90, and 91, the 1991 release coinciding with the first official sequel, Dragon's Lair 2 Time Warp. Dragon's Lair 2 Time Warp gameplay is the same structured story with directional twitch movements as your controls to advance through each scene. The story picks up after Daphne and Dirk have married and started a family. Daphne is kidnapped by an evil wizard named Mordroc. Cue the various traps and minions that Dirk must defeat while time traveling to rescue her. In 2002, Anjon Toys...
Who's that?
Anjon.
This is Anyang, who your father and I have adopted.
Released a series of action figures as a licensed tie-in to the Dragon's Lair 3D reinvention of the series. Dragon's Lair 3D shifted the gameplay to a more traditional character-following, puzzle-solving platform jumper. The 6-inch action figure line had basic articulation and featured the core characters Dirk the Daring, Princess Daphne, the evil wizard Mordroc, and Singe the Dragon. Each one came with accessories to help realize the world of Dragon's Lair, from weapons to keys to potions to the signature eyeball tentacle creatures. I was going to try to do a hand gesture for that, but I don't know where to go with it. Nostalgia for Dragon's Lair was building and reached a peak in 2003, just in time for the 20th anniversary of the original release. Cross-Gen Comics capitalized on the renewed interest, releasing 3 issues of a 6-issue series called Don Bluth's Dragon's Lair. Written by Andy Mangels, illustrated by Fabio Laguna, with colors by Tony Washington, each book expanded on the mythology, but it would take 3 more years and the intervention of Arcana Comics in 2006 before the rest of the series would hit the shelves. Dragon's Lair 2, and even Space Ace have been a staple of home gaming systems nearly every year since the original arcade release in 1983, nearly every platform over 3 decades, even hitting smartphones for the first time in 2009.
If that's a veiled criticism about me, I won't hear it and I won't respond to it.
Each iteration of PlayStation, Xbox, Xbox 360, NES, Super NES, as recent as 2017 and even this year, 2019, the trilogy was released on the Nintendo Switch. Each release getting closer and closer to replicating and improving on the original gaming experience or reinventing it as a puzzle-solving platform jumper. In 1983, Dragon's Lair was in talks to be developed into a feature-length animated film. At one point, Star Wars and Star Trek writer Alan Dean Foster was involved. Images from that production can be found online, but a finished project never materialized. For over 30 years, while producing many other successful animated features, Don Bluth held on to the hope that somehow, someday, Dragon's Lair would make it to theaters. He wanted to tell the story of Dirk the Daring untethered from the repetitive and frequently frustrating game-related barriers. In October of 2015, Don Bluth and Gary Goldman launched a Kickstarter campaign to crowdfund an initial production budget of $550,000. That money would be used to produce a short 10-minute proof-of-concept pitch animation to show studios and investors in an attempt to raise the rest of the budget, which could run anywhere from $50 million to $250 million. I had to correct it on the fly so I didn't screw it up. Halfway through the campaign, they canceled it and moved it to Indiegogo. As of January of 2016, over $700,000 had been raised, more than enough to get a comprehensive pitch reel into the hands of prospective investors. But first, it was going to take some time to produce, and that is where Dirk the Daring currently finds himself. As of November 2019, Dirk, Daphne, Singe, and the rest of the team are all trapped in legal limbo, tied up in pre-production slog, a slow and cumbersome grind toward the cinema, currently listed on IMDb with a potential 2020 release, although no specific date is listed, nor a cast, nor anything else.
Excuse me. Excuse me.
In 1983, Dragon's Lair was the biggest, most important, best-selling, most influential arcade game in existence. It is credited as helping the entire arcade industry survive the crash of the market that same year due to an increase in home computers and market oversaturation. Beyond its technical innovation that blurred the lines between animated movie and video game, it was a brief glimpse into the future of gaming, a mind-expanding example of how a player can not only play a game, but experience it. Take your metaphors, your allegories, take your life lessons, your speculative science fiction, take all the euphemisms and any other literary devices you can think of to explain this cartoon, light them on fire until they are nothing but ashes. Then take those ashes, mix them in a sack with wood chips soaked in lighter fluid, then light that sack on fire just to be sure. Because this isn't a show about a teenager becoming an adult, learning to deal with newfound responsibilities. This isn't a warning about the dangers of humanity's dependence on technology. This is a show about a guy who turns into a car. That's it. Now buckle up, because it's about to get weird. Hi, I'm Dan Larson, and this is the history of Turbo Teen. Turbo Teen is a 13-episode animated series that first aired in 1984 on Saturday mornings on the ABC network. The origin story is told within the first 30 seconds of the opening theme music. Brett Matthews is driving his car at night during a storm. Fate takes the wheel, lightning strikes a tree, forcing him off the road and right into a secret government research center. He literally crashes right into the building, into the beam coming out of an experimental device that merges him with his car at a molecular level. Now the two exist as one. Brett is cursed with the ability to change into a car whenever he gets hot. Unable to revert back to human form until he cools off, Brett deals with his newfound reality the only rational way possible. He and his friends and a dog join forces to fight crime and solve mysteries. Turbo Teen was a co-production of Ruby Spears Productions, Toei, and Hanho Hung Up Animation Studios. By 1984, Ruby Spears was a hit machine, having produced shows like Thundar the Barbarian, Alvin and the Chipmunks, Mr. T, and like the entire Saturday Supercade from Donkey Kong to Donkey Kong Jr., not to mention the Plastic Man comedy and adventure show, setting the precedent for a hero who could physically change into other things, including cars. Plastic Man could have been an influence. My Mother the Car could have been an influence. The Incredible Hulk was definitely an influence, as was the success of Knight Rider, which began in 1982. In fact, the opening titles and theme music have quite a bit of homage to Knight Rider. It's easy to imagine the creators sitting around wondering how you take the idea of Knight Rider a step further. Instead of Michael Knight and Kit, Michael Knight is Kit. Where do you start with the design of a guy who turns into a car? Which is more important, the guy or the car? To answer those questions, Ruby Spears tapped the talents of one of the greatest character designers of all time to bring their Ford Kafka to life. Jack Kirby blessed this Saturday morning metamorphosis with the same unequaled talents that birthed the Marvel Universe. You can draw a line from Mr. Fantastic to Galactus to Thor to Turbo Teen. It's not easy, but with enough ink and enough paper, you can draw that line. The cast included Michael Mish as Brett, T.K. Carter as his friend Alex, Pamela Hayden as his friend Patty, and the Frank Megatron Welker as Turbo Teen's arch nemesis, Dark Rider. Dark Rider, for those unfamiliar with context clues, was the bad guy. It was a mysterious big-wheeled monster truck that keeps showing up to try to entrap Brett in order to learn the secrets of his abilities. Dark Rider sounded like Dr. Claw from Inspector Gadget because Welker was not wasting a new voice on this show. I mean, a show about a guy that turns into a car when he gets hot? That must drive Brett crazy. You think you're progressive? Brett has no choice but to bundle his home and auto insurance. This guy, when this guy says, "Is it hot in here? Is it just me? Look out," because he's not flirting with you. He's about to turn into a car. See, for him, a carpool doesn't just mean ride sharing. It's driving into the water on a hot day so that he doesn't have to be turned into a car anymore. Look, the jokes write themselves, and it would be so easy to sit here and just run 8 minutes of me dunking on this show, but I ain't falling for no banana in the tailpipe. Yes, it is an absurd concept. Looking back on it now, we can mock the creative process from bumper to bumper. We can recoil at any attempt to criticize this thing with reasonable, rational questions. Does he consume fuel? Can he consume it when he's a human? If you put something in his trunk, or like leave your jacket in the back seat, where does it go when he changes back? Would that molecular beam have worked if he was driving other cars? What if he was driving another kind of vehicle, like a bicycle or a ride-on lawnmower? What if he'd been on a horse? What if he had just walked into it like regular? Would he be able to change into his clothes? Can he change into his clothes? If he's sick and runs a fever, do you call a doctor or a mechanic? Who details his car mode? But all of these questions miss the very important point of this cartoon. It's applying a very successful marketing formula to build a brand, to maintain excitement for that brand, to drive sales of a multitude of lifestyle-enhancing products, like toys.
We'll return after these messages.
I, Skeletor, have another warrior named Whiplash.
Battle Armor, He-Man, and Skeletor, Whiplash, and Buzz-Off each sold separately.
And I, He-Man, have a powerful winged warrior named Buzz-Off. So it's the Super Stinger Buzz-Off against the vicious tail of Whiplash. Ha-ha! Now, may the mightiest warrior win.
Buzz-Off and Whiplash figures from the Masters of the Universe collection. Other action figures also sold separately from Mattel.
We now return to Turbo Team.
So yeah, there weren't actually like any toys whatsoever. There was a GoBots branded monogram model kit that creepily changed from a 1982 Pontiac Firebird into a robot with a human head on top, but that's it. How GoBots? Well, you can draw a line from Hanna-Barbera, who produced GoBots, to Ruby Spears, who was founded by Joe Ruby and Ken Spears, who had both been executives at Hanna-Barbera, and then Tonka, who licensed the GoBots, and Monogram is in there, and I don't know, Tonka's in there, Pontiac. It's not easy, it's not a straight line, but you can draw that line. There were a few other things, a coloring book. I thought there were a few other things. All right, there's no other things. Which proves my point. Having none of the things was the most important point of this cartoon. It was what it was, a thing of pure uninhibited indulgence of creativity and thought, intended for an audience that accepts things at face value because they do not possess the prejudice yet to concern themselves with taste or style or depth. They lived in the moment, sustained by the joy of each new thing that they were exposed to, as if it was the first time being exposed to anything, because it was. The audience for Turbo Teen was as excited for a show about a guy who turns into a car the same way they were excited about seeing a dog or splashing a puddle or drinking marshmallow-saturated milk out of a bowl of cereal. This was a show for kids because kids don't ask questions about the physics of a car pogo hopping on its rear bumper. The internal logic of the show was perfectly sound enough for them. What's a metaphor? I don't know. What's a meta against? What's a meta in the first place? Bring on talking turbo boost car with dog friends, solve mysteries, fight crime. If you missed it, I hate to say that there's not much you can do to experience the purity of Turbo Teen for yourself. Not to its fullest, anyway. 5 episodes that have been found in English are available on DVD on eBay, but the other 8 appear to be lost. Episode 1, as of this video, may only be available in German. Turbo Teen is not high art. It was never intended to be, but it has become part of our modern pop culture lexicon, and for that purpose alone, it should be preserved. Turbo Teen is so obscure that you may not even realize when it's being referenced. Robot Chicken did their version, asking some of the same questions that we all have as adults in a standard skit without an ending on the Rabbits on a Roller Coaster episode. The Rotten Tomatoes show, which also was a thing at some point, ran a commercial with a not-so-subtle homage to Turbo Teen. Rick and Morty did their own version. Bender's transformation into Werecar mirrors Brett's, and even the Teen Titans Go episode, Teen Titans Vroom, reenacts the same origin story from the opening titles, changing all of the Titans into cars. We gotta act quickly. If there are tapes out there, if someone has these episodes, they need to be preserved. They belong in a museum. Even the fanfiction community at fanfiction.net/cartoon/turbo-teen is starting to lose interest. If Axe Cop became a thing for its indulgence in the chaotic stream of consciousness word association style of narrative structure, then what less do we owe Turbo Teen? What more? Everything has been done before and everything will be done again. So if you really want to tell new stories, you have to come up with new ideas. Turbo Teen is a rare example of genuinely unique stories with new characters and new situations that do not exist in any other piece of narrative art. It is a window into the willingness of the viewer to allow creators to tell whatever kind of story they want to tell without fear of meeting some arbitrary standard of sophistication. There is no modern gritty reboot of Turbo Teen coming because the adult mind no longer possesses the openness to see Turbo Teen for what it is, to unironically go along for the ride, understanding that the journey is more important than the destination, to appreciate Turbo Teen for the only thing it was ever meant to be, a show about a guy who turns into a car.
Weekdays at 3, 2 hours of red-hot action on Channel 2, starting with the Thundercats, the righteous superheroes of the universe. At 3:30, the battle rages across the galaxy as the amazing GoBots fight for control of Earth. At 4, a real American hero, exciting action with G.I. Joe. At 4:30, futuristic intergalactic combat with the Transformers. Fantastic Adventure starts weekdays at 3 on Channel 2. There's only one, 2.
The key to making learning fun is to get the students to forget that they are in fact learning, because even if they love the subject matter, adding new files to the old brain box can be boring. So do whatever you gotta do to throw them off the trail, make jokes, use puppets, wave your hands around with crazy sound effects, watch a cartoon, or sing a song, or both. Hi, I'm Dan Larson, and this is the history of Schoolhouse Rock. Schoolhouse Rock was a series of animated shorts that originally ran from roughly 1973 to 1985. They aired during commercial breaks on shows kids were already watching, sneaking education into their brains when they least expected it, right before an ad for Pac-Man cereal. Schoolhouse Rock, as the name implies, was all about music, and that might cause some problems on YouTube. We'll do our best to showcase the material, but more than likely all of the actual music content will be blocked for copyright reasons. I would sing them, but I am too good at singing. The video would still get flagged by the bots. Schoolhouse Rock used music and animation to teach kids and anyone else within listening distance about a variety of subject matter, from multiplication tables to the process by which a bill becomes a law in the American system of government, or at least how it's supposed to be. The animated shorts weren't exactly commercials, but they ran during the commercials. The songs were so catchy that even if the educational content didn't stick with you, the melody did, for years. 4 years. 4 years. 4 years. Schoolhouse Rock began as a series on the ABC network in 1973. The general concept, using pop music to teach kids about math and stuff, was originally conceived by David McCall. While traveling with his son, he observed that Dave Jr. couldn't remember the multiplication tables, but had no problem remembering the words to every song on the radio. McCall was a partner at McCaffrey & McCall, a New York-based advertising agency. He figured they had the right resources to record some songs and make a record, the dominant home music media format at the time. I hate that I have to make that clarification. He brought the idea to his creative director, George Newell, admitting that he didn't know of anyone that would be able to write the kind of music they would need. George asked around with some of his contacts and was connected with Bob Duro. Bob was a multi-talented musician who played multiple instruments, not at the same time, mind you. He had worked with prominent jazz artists like Miles Davis and Blossom Dearie. He was a songwriter, composer, and even had his own company writing and selling jingles to advertising agencies. Dave McCall, George Newell, Bob Duro, and another creative director from the agency, Tom Yo, had a meeting where McCall explained the idea to Duro. Popular music, catchy tunes, teaching kids about math and stuff, but not talking down to them. McCall stressed that this was key. Kids can tell when they're being patronized. They'll tune you right out. Duro went home and wrote 3 is a Magic Number, the song that would set the tone for everything that came after. McCall, Newell, and Yo were blown away. Duro managed to create a song that did everything they had asked for in a way that they had not expected, with lyrics that evoked math, religion, and furniture construction.
3 is a magic number. Yes,
3 is a Magic Number was released on vinyl where its teaching mission began, but the team knew that there was more to it. Tom Yo sketched up some ideas and suggested turning the song into animation. They put together a demo reel and sold it to one of their biggest clients, ABC, thanks to very positive reception by ABC Vice President Michael Eisner and Animation Hall of Famer Chuck Jones. ABC was already developing a show called Curiosity Shop with Animation Hall of Famer Chuck Jones. Michael Eisner had tasked Jones with creating a Sesame Street Compete program after Sesame Street hit the air in 1969 and changed the way television could be used to reach young viewers. And teach young viewers, of course. Don't want to leave that part out. Curiosity Shop, like Sesame Street, was a show that featured humans interacting with puppets in a television show with an educational focus. 3 is a Magic Number made its animated debut as part of the first episode in September of 1971. Schoolhouse Rock outlived Curiosity Shop, whose last episode aired in 1972. In fact, all 17 episodes of Curiosity Shop are now considered lost, so if you happen to have any old tapes or reels that might have an episode on it, reach out. 2 years later, in 1973, 11 total animated shorts had been produced for the first season of Schoolhouse Rock called Multiplication Rock. Each short focused on a different number, like Elementary, My Dear, about the number 2, My Hero 0, and Naughty number 9. Bob Duro wrote the music and lyrics for all 11 shorts. He performed the vocals for 8, with the others being sung by jazz artists Grady Tate and Blossom Dearie. The collected recordings earned him a Grammy nomination in 1973, but Sesame Street Live took home the trophy. ABC shortened each 30 and 60-minute block of children's television by 3 minutes so they could sell the Schoolhouse Rock segments as an independent set of sponsored broadcast time. Season 1 was followed by Season 2 with a new focus, Grammar Rock.
That's where I find satisfaction.
9 more shorts teaching English language structure with titles like Conjunction Junction, Lolly Lolly Lolly, Get Your Adverbs Here, and Verb, That's What's Happening. George Newell and Tom Yo continued as the executive producer and creative director respectively. Bob Duro maintained his position as music director, writing the music and lyrics for 5 of the 9 new shorts. However, Duro sang only 3. Lynn Ahrens and George Newell himself wrote the other 4 songs. New performers were added, including Zachary Sanders, Jack Sheldon, and Ezra Mohawk. Season 3, America Rock, aired from 1975 to 1976, and thanks to the bicentennial celebration, explored the founding and expansion of the United States. It is the first time that shorts would begin to cause some controversy due to its history from a certain point of view. No More Kings is about America's fight for independence from England. Sufferin' Till Suffrage addresses the fight by women for their right to vote. But Elbow Room has not aged well. It explores the concept of manifest destiny, the assumed God-blessed right of American settlers to expand their territory westward across the continent by any means necessary. While manifest destiny was an idea used as justification for the westward expansion and was taught in schools, Elbow Room does not tell the violent story of the massacre and displacement of Native Americans. And if it did, that's not something that you would really want to set to fun pop music, Iron Maiden notwithstanding. The song 3-Ring Government didn't air until 1979 because the higher-ups at ABC feared that the FCC and Congress itself, the greatest deliberative body on Earth, would be offended by the comparison to a circus, and ABC wouldn't be able to get its broadcast license renewed.
I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill.
Season 3 did deliver I'm Just a Bill, one of the most iconic shorts of the entire run. It talks about the process by which a simple idea can become a law and the role that the various positions in government play. It is the most recognized piece, having been parodied on Saturday Night Live and the floor of the actual Senate.
With marshmallows and corn puffs, Pac-Man cereal's part of a good breakfast. You can do it! You can do the Pac-Man!
9 more shorts were produced for Season 4 Science Rock beginning in 1978. 6 of them were written by Lynn Ahrens. George Newell kicked in 2 and Bob Duro added 1. The song A Victim of Gravity doubled down on pop culture influence as it homaged the music from Grease. The popular stage production was made into a feature film starring Olivia Newton-John and John Travolta that same year. The rest of the science was split between subjects like the solar system in Interplanet Janet, the circulatory system in Do the Circulation, and electricity in Electricity. Controversy once again found the musical Schoolhouse as the song The Greatest Show on Earth became the target of legal action, this time by an actual circus. Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus thought the title of the weather-focused episode, The Greatest Show on Earth, was a little too close to their trademarked phrase, The Greatest Show on Earth. The episode was shelved for many years before it was just retitled The Weather Show, and everyone moved on knowing that the reputation of the circus as the greatest show on Earth was solidly intact, from a certain point of view. Over time, Schoolhouse Rock developed a workflow. Songwriters pitched their ideas. They wrote them over the course of 2 to 3 weeks. Bob Duro would give them the thumbs up or thumbs down. The lyrics would then be vetted by the Bank Street School of Education. Then ABC would take a look. If all approved, it would move on to animation. Season 5 was an aberration, however, sometimes even referred to as a spin-off. In the early 80s, computers were becoming more and more prevalent in daily life. It was an important topic that the production wanted to take on. For the first time, they created a cast of recurring characters. A boy named Scooter Computer and a computer named Mr. Chips were a variation on the classic Jay Ward-produced Sherman and Mr. Peabody characters. But in this case, Mr. Chips has to constantly remind Scooter that as an inanimate object, he is incapable of doing anything beyond that which he is programmed to do. The recurring characters maintained familiarity to communicate the concepts over a series of episodes. But of all the Schoolhouse Rock shorts, the 4 Scooter Computer and Mr. Chips episodes had the shortest broadcast life. Like computers themselves, the concepts communicated in the miniseries quickly became outdated and obsolete. Even with the unconventional programming between episodes of other cartoons, Schoolhouse Rock had to fight to maintain its place. 1985 would see it lose that place to ABC Fun Fit, starring Olympic gold medal gymnast Mary Lou Retton teaching kids about physical fitness. In 1993, Schoolhouse Rock returned as both a live stage show called Schoolhouse Rock Live and new episodes airing on ABC. Schoolhouse Rock Live follows first-day teacher Tom having a crisis of confidence. He turns on the TV and finds himself getting help from these Schoolhouse Rock characters come to life. Directed by Scott Ferguson, it opened in Chicago, Illinois, where it ran for a record-breaking 8 months before moving to New York in 1995. After 11 months in New York, it returned to Chicago to close out its original run. In 1997, it began a national tour, which would happen again in 1999 and 2000. The show continues to tour through today and even inspired a sequel called Schoolhouse Rock Live 2, that's TOO, developed by the same production team.
This is the tale of Mr. Morton. Mr. Morton is who?
The new television episodes Busy Prepositions and The Tale of Mr. Morton, written by Bob Duro and Lynn Ahrens respectively, were produced for Schoolhouse Rock's return to ABC in 1993 alongside the originals. Both are technically part of the Grammar Rock library if you're keeping track at home. Schoolhouse Rock was originally conceived as music, so it should be no surprise that these songs have been released on vinyl and cassette over the years. The earliest release was in 1973 by Capitol Records for the first season Multiplication Rock. All 11 songs are included, but more importantly, 2 songs that had been cut down for time on television, My Hero Zero and 3 is a Magic Number, are both restored to their original length. Schoolhouse Rock was released on VHS multiple times as well, in 1987 by Golden Book Video with appearances by Cloris Leachman, but the real merchandising boom started in 1994 when ABC sold the exclusive licensing rights to Coastal Concepts Incorporated. It was the first time any apparel had been produced as the kids who grew up with it now sought out nostalgic merchandise. The series, the brand, was brought back amidst a wave of nostalgia for everything 70s and 80s. In the years that followed, the logo and characters would put on everything from t-shirts to mugs to stickers to bobbleheads. The wave of nostalgia that powered the sale of licensed merchandise in 1994 coincided with the creation of new episodes that began airing that same year. Money Rock visited topics like interest in loans in the song Dollars and Cents, the U.S. national debt in the song Tyrannosaurus Debt, and the stock exchange in the song Walkin' Wall Street. The new episodes ran through 1996 and were produced by many of the same people that worked on the original series. That same year, a tribute album called Schoolhouse Rock Rocks was released by Atlantic Hollywood Records, featuring covers by popular artists like Blind Melon, Better Than Ezra, Pavement, Moby, and Biz Markie. And just in time because the ABC network was purchased by Disney in 1996, which meant that Schoolhouse Rock also belonged to Disney. Disney continued to air Schoolhouse Rock but did not create any new episodes. As of the year 2000, the series was no longer broadcast on television. However, in 2002, they got the band back together for a new episode called I'm Gonna Send Your Vote to College. Written by George Newell, performed by Bob Duro and Jack Sheldon, with animation developed by Tom Yo Jr., subbing in for his father who passed away in 2000. It was included on the 30th anniversary VHS and DVD releases. Reruns of the series popped up on Disney's Toon Disney Big Movie Show block of programming in 2004, but didn't last long. In 2008, the Schoolhouse Rock Election Collection DVD was released featuring another episode called Presidential Minute, written by George Newell and Tom Yo Jr. The following year, in 2009, the final season of Schoolhouse Rock, called Earth Rock, was released direct to DVD. 11 new songs written by founders like Bob Duro, Lynn Ahrens, and George Newell, along with newcomers like Sean Altman of Rockapella and Jack Johnson. It focused on climate change and conservation. As of June 2020, the entire series can be streamed on Disney+. However, a note was added to the series to inform viewers that, quote, "This program is presented as originally created, and it may contain outdated cultural depictions." Schoolhouse Rock is still recognized as a standard bearer in children's education, marrying learning with catchy, memorable, fun music. It has simplified complex topics into easy-to-understand shorts that you can dance to. For better or for worse, legend has it that I'm Just a Bill has been used to train actual lobbyists and their staff, and reinforce those concepts for anyone who hasn't addressed the topic in a while. Bob Duro set the tone early on with 3 as a magic number. Others became iconic songs that persist today. The series helped him build on his already successful jazz music career. The Schoolhouse Rock experience for him had been a life-changing one that he cherished. In an archived interview on yahoo.com, he summed up his career by saying, quote, "I sometimes say the kids grow up and now they're older and now they go to bars and drink and they discover me again playing at bars. It was designed to educate, but I attempted to write songs that would entertain anyone from ages 2 to 92. George Newell suggested that part of the decline of Schoolhouse Rock in circulation was due to the difficulty to get approvals from ABC and Disney. He observed that songs were no longer being evaluated based on their actual, factual, educational content. Rather, they were being judged by effective advertising metrics, preconceived ideas about what the songs should be. The early days were about collaborations with educators, people who were interested in teaching, in taking the complex subjects and helping kids understand them. Yes, they wanted to sell records, but first, they wanted to teach. In 2018, Schoolhouse Rock, the box set, which had been released in 1996, was added to the National Recording Registry at the Library of Congress. Its place in history, in pop culture, and in education was firmly established. Its value was fully recognized. Now it was officially a piece of cherished American art history to be preserved for generations to come.
I got it! Wow!
Introducing the G.I. Joe USS Flag aircraft carrier. Imagine being on the deck of this aircraft carrier.
The USS Flag is fantastic! It's so big! Over deck, Middlebusters! Get ready to launch aircraft! Where's the Admiral? Not here! G.I. Joe! Fire! Restart Cobra! Yo, Joe!
G.I. Joe USS Flag aircraft carrier comes with what you see here. Other figures and equipment sold separately from Hasbro.
After riding the wave of popularity following 2 feature films, it turns out you can have too much of a good thing. The question is, once you've realized it, do you double down on what started the wave in the first place, or do you hand off to a new generation, a new perspective, cross your fingers and hope for the best? Hi, I'm Dan Larson, and this is the history of the Real Ghostbusters. We have previously covered elements of the Real Ghostbusters in a video that focused almost exclusively on the Kenner toy line. While it allowed us to touch on general aspects of the brand, it left out a whole lot of basic stuff. We're revisiting it here to tell a more complete story that will unfortunately barely touch on things like the Ghostbusters movies and the spin-off series The Extreme Ghostbusters. They will get their own videos eventually, but not today. The Real Ghostbusters is a 140-episode animated series that ran 7 seasons from 1986 to 1991. Kind of a sequel to, sort of a spin-off of the 1984 movie Ghostbusters, borrowing a lot but still doing its own thing. The series follows New York's foremost supernatural eliminators Egon Spengler, Ray Stantz, Peter Venkman, and Winston Zeddemore in a world where ghosts and ghouls are a very real, potentially dangerous part of everyday life. The Ghostbusters are simultaneously regular workaday schlubs like you and me, and superheroes with experimental technology defending the city, the world, and this dimension from the most dangerous threats we could possibly imagine. But take heart, nothing is so terrible that the Ghostbusters can't resolve it within roughly 22 minutes, and there won't be anything so earth-shattering that it would impact the greater Ghostbusters franchise long-term, because as much as the real Ghostbusters drove the brand on a daily basis, it was never steering the ship. The franchise was, of course, the movies. The feature film Ghostbusters, released in 1984, was produced by Ivan Reitman and written by Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis. It was produced and distributed by Columbia Pictures. It starred Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Harold Ramis, and Ernie Hudson as the Ghostbusters. It earned nearly $300 million in its initial run in theaters and, more importantly, became a pop culture sensation. The success of the film fast-tracked the production of an animated series, or rather, series. Not just one series is what I'm trying to say. Series is. More than one series from more than one production company. Because before there was Ghostbusters, there was The Ghostbusters, a completely unrelated 1975 live-action television sitcom produced by Filmation that ran for a single season of 15 episodes about a team of paranormal investigators, one of whom was a gorilla. Years later, during the production of the 1984 movie Ghostbusters, Columbia Pictures licensed the name from Universal Studios, the then owner of Filmation's 1975 The Ghostbusters. The agreement did not guarantee Universal or Filmation the rights to create a cartoon based on the 1984 film Ghostbusters at any point, regardless of performance. That job ultimately went to DiC Entertainment. Within a year of the release of 1984's Ghostbusters, DiC was already racing to get a series in production and sold to a network. With almost no lead time, DiC produced a segment just short of 4 minutes long that showcased what a Ghostbusters cartoon would look like. The short was storyboarded on the fly by Eddie Fitzgerald and director Kevin Altieri, working with character designs that were still evolving. Producers Joe Medjuck and Michael C. Gross both served as associate producers on the 1984 film and made sure that there was a tonal consistency in the cartoon. While the creators wanted to retain the spirit of Ghostbusters the movie, the intent was not to reproduce the characters literally. DiC was intentionally trying to avoid any issues with likeness rights. That said, even in the finished pilot, Venkman still looks more like Bill Murray than he does in the actual series. DiC needed the freedom to develop these characters independent of the movie versions. Keep the voices without using the actual voices. For example, Ernie Hudson himself auditioned for the role of Winston, whom he played in the movie, but lost the part to Arsenio Hall. Venkman was played by Lorenzo Music, who was also the voice of Garfield at the time. Egon was played by Maurice LaMarche, Janine was played by Laura Summer, and Frank Megatron Welker played Ray Stantz, Slimer, the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, Mayor Lenny Cloth, and a bunch of other characters. Filmation was denied the opportunity to work on the Ghostbusters cartoon, but that didn't prevent them from making their own cartoon based on their 1975 TV show, The Ghostbusters, which they did. They started their race to broadcast at the same time as DiC. The simultaneous development of two competing Ghostbuster-themed cartoons meant that DiC had to make it very clear, right up front in the title, that the show they were producing was the one based on the movie, the Real Ghostbusters cartoon. So they called it The Real Ghostbusters. Filmation's Ghostbusters managed to air their first episode a few days before the first episode of DiC's The Real Ghostbusters. Ultimately, the attempt to piggyback off the popularity of the hit film created far more confusion for Filmation than for DiC. Despite being older, there was little to no public awareness of their 1975 TV show with a gorilla. Filmation's Ghostbusters was a well-executed and perfectly entertaining show in its own right, with Peter Optimus Prime Cullen playing a feature role, but it seemed like a knockoff attempting to steal a few minutes of fame due to the naming similarity. The show, and thereby the toy sales related to it, struggled. Filmation producer Lou Scheimer would later admit that it was probably a bad business move from the start. ABC ordered an initial batch of 13 weekly episodes of The Real Ghostbusters from DiC for the first season, but didn't stop there. They also wanted 65 daily episodes for use in syndication to be broadcast on network affiliates at the same time. And you know, I won't go so far as to say that J. Michael Straczynski is a friend of the show, but I did meet him at a convention in Connecticut once, and he said he knew about our show. I was very nervous to talk to him because he's kind of a big deal, so I nervously said, "Hi, it's very nice to meet you," then just kind of walked away. Whatever that is, that's our relationship with him. And Not many people know this, but J. Michael Straczynski was one of the main writers and story editors for The Real Ghostbusters. The additional 65 syndicated episodes presented Straczynski and the other writers at DiC with a lot more work to do than they originally thought they had, and different circumstances under which they were going to produce all those episodes. The 13 Season 1 episodes that would be airing weekly on ABC were going to be held to a higher standard for children's television content. They had to adhere to strict broadcast standards and practices, tone down the violence, the demonic imagery. Everybody put a seatbelt on, please. The 65 syndicated Season 2 episodes were almost uncompromised, practically aired as originally conceived and written. Demons, vampires, werewolves, an episode inspired by Cthulhu and Samhain itself. That's how it's pronounced in the show. Save your Samhain and Samhain takes for your Halloween parties. Season 1 aired on Saturdays from September to December of 1986. A year later, in September of 1987, thanks to these 65 syndicated episodes, and in order for 13 more weekly episodes for Season 3, kids got Real Ghostbusters cartoons 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday. Ghostbusters was hot.
Joey, would you please get the Real Ghostbusters from the cupboard?
Real Ghostbusters. Ghostly pasta in a delicious tomato sauce.
This ghost is history.
Real Ghostbusters love Real Ghostbusters. New from Heinz.
If you said that today in 2021, your network was number 3 in the ratings, that would actually be okay. There's a ton of networks and entertainment choices beyond television. But in 1987, with only 3 networks to choose from in many markets, third place was last place, and somebody's gonna get fired. ABC reached out to a consulting firm called the Q5 Corporation. Q5 was a collection of psychology PhDs, marketing, advertising, and research professionals. According to that same article in the LA Times from 1987, their objective was to, quote, determine product payoff. The level of product payoff is the degree to which a product and its attributes match the needs and wants of the consumer. Essentially, they compiled statistical data from scientific studies that they stored in computers and then developed a recommendation respective to the specific product and the intended customer. They had worked with companies like Hallmark, Marvel Productions, 20th Century Fox, Mattel, and Fisher-Price. If you had a problem, they claimed they could solve it.
Check out the hook while my DJ revolves it.
ABC was looking to Q5 for insight into how they could improve their Saturday morning performance overall against NBC and CBS. Some of that guidance landed on The Real Ghostbusters. Season 3 was when things started to change. Some of the character designs were modified subtly, some drastically. Ray was a bit slimmer, Slimer got a tail, aesthetic things that didn't really affect who they were. Janine, on the other hand, Janine got a full makeover. Out with the spiky hair and in with a softer spoken, more reserved character overall. The result was a Janine Melnitz with softer features, smoother hair, big round glasses, and no jewelry. Knee-length skirts instead of minis. As Straczynski put it in 1987, Q5 wanted us to knock off all the corners. Janine was a strong, vibrant character. They wanted her to be more feminine, more maternal, more nurturing, like every other female on television. The writers weren't on board, feeling that Q5 was trying to engineer creativity instead of employing imagination and challenging the audience. That Q5 wasn't trying to match the tastes of the youthful audience, but that their methods were practically letting kids create the show. Q5 recommended eliminating Ray altogether as, in their opinion, he served no purpose. Jeannie Trias, vice president of children's programming at ABC, countered, reassuring everyone that Q5 was just another objective voice in the room, and that a lot of what Q5 recommends is just reinforcing what they already knew about their products and customers. And besides, they aren't necessarily going to act on it anyway. Ray isn't going anywhere. Legend has it that Bill Murray didn't like Venkman sounding like Garfield and that he pressured producers to recast. Whether it was Murray or Q5, ABC did recast both Janine and Venkman, replacing Lorenzo Music and Laura Summer with Dave Coulier and Kath Soucie. Furthermore, they re-recorded the dialogue for both characters from the previous season for consistency. The reality is that the changes Q5 recommended were only intended for the weekly ABC episodes and did not affect the episodes that were shown in syndication, which was the bulk of the series. Straczynski would get the last laugh in an episode during season 6 called Janine, You've Changed. That episode directly addresses her change in appearance and personality by the characters in the story. Janine was both under influence of a demon and had attempted to start a relationship with Egon by becoming what she thought he would be interested in. That is canon. Change would be a constant with The Real Ghostbusters. The longer any series goes, the more they will have to adapt to quickly shifting tastes of the audience and developments behind the scenes. Some characters will inevitably be more popular than others. Season 4 saw Arsenio Hall leave the show to be replaced by Buster Jones. It also brought a change of episode format and series name. In 1988, The Real Ghostbusters was changed to Slimer and The Real Ghostbusters. Episodes went from a half hour to a full hour. That hour was one of 8 new regular episodes, teamed up with a series of either 2 or 3 shorts focusing on breakout character Slimer. A total of 33 Slimer shorts broken into 13 episodes introduced a host of new characters tangential to Slimer's adventures, independent of the Ghostbusters themselves and the New York Firehouse. In 1989, Columbia Pictures released Ghostbusters 2. The Real Ghostbusters had done a fantastic job keeping the franchise alive long enough for a sequel to hit theaters, but that didn't necessarily help the performance of the film itself. It took in just over $215 million, which resulted in Columbia dismissing it as a financial and critical failure. I can say now, from the future, that it was the definitive end of the movie franchise for the next 3 decades. But The Real Ghostbusters wasn't done yet, and also didn't need the movie franchise to keep its audience coming back. 21 season 5 episodes take place after the events of the second film, airing from September to December of 1989. A 6th season would add 16 more episodes in 1990, and a 7th season would finally finish out the original series with 4 more episodes in 1991. Ghostbusters was a pop culture phenomenon and incredibly popular with kids. We absolutely can't cover everything that was produced. Heck, we can't even cover all of the toys that were produced. Kenner released a line of action figures, vehicles, playsets, and role-play toys beginning in 1986. The designs and packaging were aesthetically tied to the animated series, but obviously could also work as toys for the films themselves. All of the Ghostbusters were represented as were characters like Janine Melnitz, Louis Tully, Slimer, the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, and all the ghosts, zombies, monsters, mutants, and specters you could need. The firehouse came with a containment unit, a working fire pole, parking for the Ecto-1 sold separately, and vents at the top that facilitated slime interactivity. Green ooze dripping down through the entire facility. Kenner's Ghostbusters toys were an immediate hit beginning with the holiday season in 1986. Each character featured in their cartoon colors jumpsuits with a proton pack and neutrona wand with a stream of energy emanating from the tip. Each figure packed with a ghost accessory so they have something to catch. Subsequent waves would introduce fright features with engineering that elicited exaggerated expressions of fear from each of the characters when you squeezed their legs together. Screaming heroes that screamed when you wound them up and attached their ghost accessory. Super fright features that doubled down on the expressions of terror from the previous Fright Features characters, Power Pack heroes, slimed heroes, and even glow-in-the-dark Ecto-Glow. An astounding 10 waves were officially released, but Kenner had plans for even more. By 1991, not only had the series come to an end with no more movie sequels in sight, but Kenner was also purchased by Hasbro, shifting priorities and consolidating budgets. The Real Ghostbusters hit comic shelves in 1988 through Now Comics and Marvel UK. Now released 32 issues, a 3D special, and 2 annuals. In 1989, when the second film hit, they released a 3-issue miniseries called Real Ghostbusters, starring in Ghostbusters 2. Marvel UK put out nearly 200 issues along with 4 annuals and 10 special issues. It was published weekly and even rolled in some of the previously published stories. Slimer got his own series with both publishers as well. Most of these books have been collected into trade paperbacks for easy reading. You could play as the Real Ghostbusters in the arcades thanks to 1987's The Real Ghostbusters, a shoot-'em-up style game released by Data East in the US. It's actually a reskinned Japanese game called Mei Q Hunter G, but that shouldn't diminish your enjoyment of it at all. It still sings the Ray Parker Jr. version of the theme song. The Real Ghostbusters was also adapted for home systems like the Amiga, the Amstrad CPC, Commodore 64, and ZX Spectrum, but you'd have to wait until 1993 for another home system game based on the cartoon. That's when Kemco released The Real Ghostbusters for the Nintendo Game Boy. Yes, it's another reskinned game that, depending on the international market you're in, might feature Peter Venkman, Mickey Mouse, or Garfield. But again, that shouldn't diminish your enjoyment of the game, especially since the Ghostbusters version has 10 more stages than the others. That said, it was not without controversy. According to game developer Traveling Bits, the Real Ghostbusters game design and mechanics, along with the alternate versions featuring Mickey Mouse and Garfield, are stolen from their 1991 game, Pee-Pee Hammer and His Pneumatic Weapon. And it is entirely unauthorized. Don't ask, it's on the list. Ghostbusters and the Real Ghostbusters were the inspiration for licensed merchandise across the spectrum of consumable goods, from sleeping bags to watches to walkie-talkies to bubble bath to color forms, backpacks, handheld games from Remco, a board game from Milton Bradley, and literal consumable goods like Slimer and the Real Ghostbusters cereal. Episodes of The Real Ghostbusters were released in 2004 and 2006. There were even a few episodes included on the DVD for Ghostbusters 2. In 2008, Time Life released a comprehensive set. In 2016, Sony began re-releasing the series in batches of 10 to 12 episodes. However, nearly 30 episodes and the Slimer shorts were left out. In 2017, those same episodes were released again in a still incomplete collection. As of this video, 56 episodes are available to stream for free on Crackle.com, or you can purchase it digitally from Google Play or Amazon Prime. Some episodes are available at the Ghostbusters YouTube channel, and others can be purchased. 6 years after the last episode of The Real Ghostbusters, a new series attempted to carry on the Bustin' legacy. 40 episodes of Extreme Ghostbusters pick up years after the team has gone their separate ways, leaving only Egon and Slimer to care for the firehouse, the containment unit, and the last of the petty cash. Egon is back teaching at the university, where he recruits a new team of teenagers with attitude to fight back against the recent influx of spectral activity. As the Ghostbusters taught us from the beginning, nothing stays dead forever, not so long as there is value in the license, and especially if there's a movie to create spectacle. The Real Ghostbusters is not immune to that. The children of the 80s are adults now, many with kids or grandkids or cats of their own. The nostalgia for the media and toys we grew up with and the desire to share it with the next generation has ushered in the return of so many brands that had languished. And it has been very good for a variety of businesses. Not that there's anything wrong with that. In 2015, IDW Comics published a 4-issue miniseries featuring the Ghostbusters characters that had been in their ongoing comics since 2011, crossing over with characters inspired by the Real Ghostbusters. The miniseries, called Ghostbusters Get Real, saw a collision of 2 universes worth of Ghostbusters teaming up to fight against a villain called Proteus. In 2018, Diamond Select released a set of Real Ghostbusters figures built on the previously existing bodies and accessories of their movie-inspired series of Ghostbusters figures. Each individual figure had a cartoon-inspired head and paint deco and came packed with a piece of a firehouse diorama. In 2019, they released a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive box set that featured those same characters repainted and molded with translucent green plastic as the Spectral Ghostbusters, an homage to the episode Citizen Ghost, which explains how Slimer came to live with the Ghostbusters after the events of the 1984 film, as well as the reasoning for the new Ghostbusters uniforms. Hasbro purchased Kenner in 1991 and has since owned the Real Ghostbusters as part of the marketing push for Ghostbusters Afterlife, the second sequel to the 1984 film, currently scheduled for release in November of 2021. Hasbro released Kenner Classic The Real Ghostbusters toys that were modeled almost exactly after the original vintage figures and packaging. Surely there is more planned for the future, Afterlife box office notwithstanding. Ghostbusters exploded into pop culture in 1984, inevitably inspiring a cartoon and related action figures, as was the way of the 80s, reaching an audience larger than anyone could have predicted, even surviving the meddling of analysts and consultants. It was one of the longest-running, most popular cartoons of all time, even after the movie franchise itself had burned out. It's likely that many fans of the show, especially in later seasons, didn't even know or care about the movies. Their Ghostbusters were the ones they spent 6 days a week with, the ones whose adventures they followed in the comics and created for themselves with the toys. To them, it wasn't just a cartoon about the Ghostbusters, it was a cartoon about the real Ghostbusters. A breakout hit like the film, it was inspired by surpassing expectations to become one of the most popular cartoons during the time it aired, the unlimited canvas of animation reproducing the unconventional, otherworldly sense of creativity and spontaneity from the original film as closely as possible. Turns out that kind of exaggerated reality is standard operating procedure in cartoon land. Hi, I'm Dan Larson, and this is the history of Beetlejuice, the animated series. Beetlejuice, the animated series, ran 94 episodes over 4 seasons from 1989 to 1991. Along with Batman, the animated series, it represented nearly a decade of cartoons inspired by Tim Burton movies starring Michael Keaton. Beetlejuice, the animated series, follows 2 unconventional friends and their adventures in the real world and the netherworld. Lydia Dietz is a girl who, by her own account, is strange and unusual. She's obsessed with the dark corners of the supernatural. Cursed to live with her parents, Charles and Delia Dietz, she hungers for an escape from the urban mundanity of both the town of Peaceful Pines and this realm of the living. Beetlejuice is a post-life entity, a conduit of the supernatural who wields an incredible, seemingly inexhaustible amount of magical power, frequently channeled through puns. Beetlejuice is, by his own account, the ghost with the most. The only limitations to his power, his imagination, the will to implement it, oh, and a curse that can involuntarily conjure him, dispel him, or transport you to his location when you say his name 3 times. Unlike Candyman or Bloody Mary, speaking of this devil won't necessarily get you killed, but like Destiny's Child, if you say his name, he's not going to just sit around and be played. Beetlejuice is like a mischief magnet, always working a new scam, a new angle, a new way to keep death interesting. Lydia is there to prevent his lesser angels from getting the better of him. Because it's all fun and games unless someone gets hurt, which could result in a one-way ticket to the neither world without saying anyone's name. Beetlejuice, the animated series, is kind of a sequel to, sort of a spin-off of the 1988 movie Beetlejuice, directed by Tim Burton, borrowing a lot but still doing its own thing. It stars Alec Baldwin and Geena Davis as Adam and Barbara Maitland, the newly deceased couple who turned to a bio-exorcist named Beetlejuice in an attempt to remove the new owners of their house, in which they themselves are trapped in for the next 125 years. Those unwelcome new homeowners are Lydia's parents, Delia and Charles Dietz, played by Catherine O'Hara and Jeffrey Jones. Lydia Dietz herself is played by Winona Ryder, and Michael Keaton plays Beetlejuice. The plot of the movie is similar to the animated series, except Beetlejuice is a step beyond mischievous, with motivations that, at times, border on evil. Dangerous, certainly. Deadly, potentially. His relationship with Lydia is purely a means to facilitate his transition from the realm of the dead back to the world of the living, where he can wield far more power. Beetlejuice in the movie is more crude and profane than the character in the cartoon, and while Lydia is fascinated by the other side, she recognizes how manipulative and dangerous Beetlejuice is and has no desire to be friends with him. Beetlejuice was a surprise hit when it was released in 1988, not the #1 film at the box office kind of hit, but the low-budget, high-ticket sales pop culture influencer kind of hit. It took home nearly $74 million against a budget of $15 million and won an Academy Award for Best Makeup. But this isn't about the movie Beetlejuice. We will get to that in another video. This is a video about the animated series born from Warner Brothers' desire to keep the spirit alive, to turn on the juice and see what shakes loose.
Friends, does anyone ever say to you,
Like, what are you? Some kind of gnarly geek dweeb?
is your life a bowl of raspberries? Then you need a jolt of our juice. It's salt. Beetlejuice, that is.
This is outrageous.
I'm a ham. Deviled ham. The big eye is ready to gross you out in a most frightfully charming way. It's a wild idea. Beetlejuice, weekdays at 4 on the Fox 25 Kids Club.
Warner Brothers Television, with Tim Burton himself as a producer, teamed up with Nelvana Entertainment and the Geffen Film Company for 13 weekly episodes, beginning in September of 1989 on the ABC television network. The first step being to save money by recasting everyone. Adam and Barbara Maitland are completely cut. Charles and Delia Dietz are played by Roger Dunn and Elizabeth Hannah respectively. Lydia Dietz is played by Allison Court, and Stephen Ouimet takes on the title role of Beetlejuice. The Danny Elfman theme from the film, or a variation thereof, returns, rearranged by Elfman himselfman, but other cosmetic changes were made to give the series its own identity. Beetlejuice gets a hair and skin color makeover. Lydia looks chic in her new spider poncho when she's under the influence of the Neither World. The Dietzes have a high-strung black cat named Percy who is perpetually antagonized by Beetlejuice, but Percy is a survivor. He finds his own way to get revenge. Their home is now in the town of Peaceful Pines instead of Winter River. The Dietz's house, instead of being the former residence of the Maitlands, is now thought to have been abandoned by the previous owner, a guy named Beetlejuice. The most significant change from the film to the animated series is the relationships between the characters. Instead of being adversaries, everything is about fun and friendship. It was a hit formula for ABC. 8 more episodes were ordered for season 2. They aired from September to October of 1990, at which point Warner Brothers Television raised the commitment to 2 more seasons that would air simultaneously from September to December of 1991. Season 3 was another 8 episodes. Season 4 was 65 daily episodes. However, these episodes would be airing on Fox Kids instead of ABC. Ultimately, it meant that in 1991, fans would be able to watch Beetlejuice Adventures 6 days a week across 2 different networks. Kenner Toys already had a line of action figures, vehicles, and role-play items on the market related to the movie Beetlejuice. From 1989 to 1998, figures were released with a sideline called Neighborhood Nasties. Heavily influenced by and likely intended to be a counterpart to their ongoing toy line, the Real Ghostbusters, neither the main Beetlejuice line nor the Neighborhood Nasties had any connection to the animated series designs beyond some of the names. A third series of figures was planned but never completed. It would have seen additional figures for the movie line, but also, potentially, some designs related to the animated series. Very early prototypes of Jacques Laline, the monster across the street, and a Blue Knight. Burger King stepped up where everyone else dropped the ball, offering 6 Burger King Kids Meal Premiums, soft vinyl toys with dual identities. On the front, a character from the series. On the back, Beetlejuice being Beetlejuice, doing Beetlejuice things. Like the toys, there was already some merchandise out there for the movie itself. However, several companies took advantage of the license to produce materials related to the animated series as well. Trading cards, sticker albums, puzzles, lunchboxes, party supplies, color forms, Viewmaster reels, watches, Halloween costumes, and more. Harvey Comics released around a half a dozen comic books in 1991 and 1992. Minstrel Books published a series of storybooks written by B.J. Spector. I meant to verify if that was a real name. I don't think it is. Is it? It's a little on the nose. Maybe that's why they got the job in the first place. High Tech Expressions released a game for PC called Adventures of Beetlejuice: Skeletons in the Closet. You control Beetlejuice as he eats bugs and attempts to eliminate all of the skeletons on the game board by shooting loogie projectiles and protecting Lydia as she cleans up the mess. Save that for later. In 1992, Rare released Beetlejuice: Horrific Hijinks from the Netherworld for the Nintendo Game Boy. Once again, you control Beetlejuice as he attempts to dispel all of the skeletons in the Dietz's house. Blasting ghouls with magic, jumpin', and ride on a minecart and a pogo snake, there are some elements of animated violence along with a dark goth theme. My life is a dark goth theme. Several episodes of Beetlejuice, the animated series, were released on VHS in 1993. Fans would have to wait until May of 2013 for Shout Factory to release the complete series on DVD. However, it was exclusive to Amazon. Season 1 was released at the same time to other retailers, with seasons 2 and 3 following in 2014. All that juice from the 90s doesn't seem to have translated into the modern world. As of this video, the animated series doesn't appear to be streaming anywhere legally. Several clips are available on YouTube and other video services. Pieces of episodes, parts of seasons, but nothing substantial. Loyal Subjects has come to the rescue with a line of 3 figures based on the animated series as part of their Best Action toy line. Beetlejuice himself and 2 different versions of Lydia, one for this world and one for the Nether world. As of this video, they have not yet officially been released. It is currently ranked 126 on IMDb.com for all-time favorite animated series, right behind Celebrity Deathmatch, just ahead of SpongeBob SquarePants. Which tells you everything you need to know about the people who upvote on IMDb and the process by which things get ranked over there. You bunch of losers. You're working with a professional here. Nice fucking model. Beetlejuice didn't change the landscape of television. It didn't rewrite the history of children's programming. While there is a loyal fan base, there is little chance that the series would see any kind of a return or reboot without a supporting film reaching theaters first. There has been talk about a Beetlejuice sequel going on 33 years. It's not impossible, and given the potential return of Keaton's Batman to theaters in the very near future, who's to say that Beetlejuice isn't right behind him? Surely his return would make our millennium. And that is why I won't do 2 shows a night anymore, babe. I won't do them. Thanks for watching. Please hit like, hit subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. Thank you very much to those of you who already are. Check us out on Twitch at twitch.tv/toygalaxy. If you're in the position to help the channel grow, if you would like early access to the videos ad-free, please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/toygalaxy and let us know in the comments down below which episode in this marathon was your favorite, and in general, what your favorite Saturday morning cartoon is overall. Did we get it right on the first try? Long odds, implausible, but not impossible. Cut.